Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 871. The Fisherman watches as the Snipe and the Clam grapple. The most satisfying part was that these people were all Saint Emperors. At their level, everyone spoke based on their strength alone. Also, all of them were very fixated on their own opinions. Once they determined something to be true to them, whether the other person tried to explain or not, made no difference. From the Qin family to here, all the misunderstandings were basically still unresolved. The higher someone was in society, the harder it was to resolve any misunderstandings. Because everyone's identity was incredibly lofty. Explanations were the weapons that only the weak relied upon. Power was everything, and the bigger fist, the mightier reason. Even if it was really a misunderstanding, the loss of face was not something that they would willingly accept. Exciting? Satisfying? The interesting stuff was still behind. This show hadn't even reached the most exciting part yet. Jun Moxie stepped out and followed after them soundlessly. If he didn't finish watching this show, he wouldn't be able to sleep. After all, he was directing this show himself, personally causing the three Holy Lands and the misty illusory manor to engage in a big fight. The thrilling drama of the three Holy Lands and the misty illusory manor was about to screen. The scene at the Qin family seemed to be just a warm-up. But if they started fighting now, it would be on a completely different scale. Because the Saint Emperors of the three Holy Lands and the misty illusory manor were all fighting as well. The significance was different. Moreover, the difference this time was also too difficult to reconcile. Why? The answer was simple. Whether it be the free and natural physique disciple, or Qiao and Hai Wuya's weapon. All of these issues were a result of Jun Moxie's tricks. As long as young Master Jun did not come out and confess, these few idiots would continue to carry the Black Walk 1, unable to wash away the crime forever. But would young Master Jun confess? The answer was obvious even without asking. This fellow had worked so painstakingly to set up this entire situation. How would he possibly sabotage himself? Just like that, all 10 Saint Emperors were doomed for tragedy together. In this entire world, how many Saint Emperors were there altogether? Although the misty illusory manor's strength was not completely estimable, but just judging from the surface, there definitely wouldn't be more than 30 in total. Furthermore, all of them were ancient old fellows. Right now, he'd already instigated a fight between 10 Saint Emperors. It was the equivalent of causing half of the world's Saint Emperors to fight among themselves. Furthermore, regardless of the result of this fight, whether any real casualties would appear, the already frail alliance between the three Holy Lands and the misty illusory manor would definitely cease to exist, completely breaking apart. Within the short term, it was impossible for them to cooperate or make up again. From then on, the three Holy Lands would be the three Holy Lands, and the misty illusory manor would just be the misty illusory manor. This result was something that Jun Moxie hoped desperately for. Otherwise, why would he spend so much effort to set up such a grand drama? God knew how many brain cells Jun Moxie had sacrificed to attain this result today. Even back at Blizzard's Silver City, from the moment Jun Moxie met the ambassador from the misty illusory manor, he'd already guessed the relationship between the three Holy Lands and the misty illusory manor. At the end of the day, these four factions were remnants of the same ancestor. As long as there was an external force that could threaten them, they would naturally group together to overcome it. Jun Moxie had only offended the three Holy Lands, and he hadn't posed much threat to the misty illusory manor yet. The three Holy Lands was still easier to deal with, but the misty illusory manor was comparatively much harder to deal with. Because that place was simply too mysterious. It did not belong to same space as them, and while everyone knew of its existence, apart from the people of the misty illusory manor, no one could enter that space. For the past 10,000 years, no one had managed to infiltrate the misty illusory manor. They were unlike the three Holy Lands who could not move from their worldly position. Jun Moxie going against the three Holy Lands was an inevitable thing. When the Holy Lands were in danger, the misty illusory manor would most likely send assistance, even if they didn't have sufficient reason to interfere. They wouldn't simply watch as the three Holy Lands were destroyed. And what Jun Moxie was scared of the most was this. Before destroying the alliance between the four factions, he wouldn't rashly make a move no matter what. Because if they truly joined hands, they had enough power to even wipe Tianfa Forest off the face of this world. Such a terrifying level of strength had even been capable of sealing the 14th young master away for several hundred years, let alone the fledgling Jun Moxie. So although young Master Jun was incredibly enraged, he did not dare to truly jump out and be a target. He only dared to perform sneak attacks, attempting to hit and run, never meeting them head-on. And it was all because of his apprehensions towards the misty illusory manor. When faced with the unknown future, Jun Moxie always chose to be more careful and wary. This series of schemes was something that he'd been sitting on for a long time, but hadn't had the chance to pull it off. This time, he finally obtained the chance, and it was even a perfect chance bestowed by the heavens. If the misty illusory manor was out of the picture in this alliance of the four great factions, Kiki, young Master Jun would really be able to act without any inhibitions. The skies were broad enough for the birds to fly at ease, and the oceans vast enough for the fishes to go as they pleased. Perhaps, at the most critical moment, he could still make use of them again. If he really couldn't beat them, he could still run into Tianfa Forest to seek refuge for a moment. The three Holy Lands would only be able to stare helplessly if he did that. What an enjoyable thing was that! The enemy of my enemy is my friend. And the friend of the enemy, when turned into their foe, is even more ferocious. Young Master Jun flew along with a jolly spirit, humming a happy tune in his mouth. At a certain juncture, he even swayed his B*TT arrogantly until it rippled like the waves of the ocean. When he reached a large lotus pond over 100 li away, he saw four grown men fighting fiercely. The battle had already reached a fever pitch, like fire set to dry tinder. How exhilarating! This is definitely more exciting than the blockbuster action movies on Earth. What a sensory enjoyment this is! Young Master Jun found a place with better feng shui and sat down, deeply inhaling the fresh night air as he enjoyed the fight. The main characters in this fight were naturally Bai Qi Feng, He Ji Qiao, Chao Guo Feng, and Hai Wu Ya. These four people were all fighting bare-handed, with no weapons were involved. Hai Wu Ya and He Ji Qiao's belongings had all been stolen by Jun Moxie, so even if they wanted to use weapons, they couldn't. As for Bai Qi Feng and Chao Guo Feng, they weren't willing to take advantage of their opponent's lack of weapons. Chao Guofeng's cultivation had already reached the 3rd level of Saint Emperor, and his strength was superior to any of the people present. Engaging in single combat was already enough for him to be deemed as bullying the weak with his strength. If he still used a weapon while his opponent was empty-handed, that would be too dishonorable. The other 5 Saint Emperors of the misty illusory manor watched from the side, all of them itching for a go as well. From the way things were looking right now, Hai Wu Ya and He Ji Qiao were likely not going to be able to avoid suffering a tragic defeat tonight. Young Master Jun watched from the side with a peace of mind. He had the feeling that by watching from a distance a fight between two tigers, he could definitely join in the fun somehow, reaping huge rewards. 2 Saint Emperors against 7, while the misty illusory manners side had a third-level Saint Emperor whose strength far surpassed theirs. The results of a matchup like this was basically obvious, right? Of course. If a Saint Emperor simply wanted to run, even if the misty illusory manners Saint Emperors joined hands, it would be difficult to stop even one of them. But the problem now was that the 9 of them had all gone mad with anger. They needed to vent their anger. To vent it violently. The battle gradually grew more and more heated, even containing certain traces of not wanting to back down until one side dies. At this moment, young Master Jun was practically clapping his hands with glee. Well done. By the time all of you are done venting, you will realize that even if you're not dead, you will be ridden with injuries, and your strength will be greatly sapped. At least 95% of your strength will be gone. At that time, it will be this third-level venerable young master's time to go crazy. Of course, if the 9 Saint Emperors' strength were all depleted, that would be the best. But young Master Jun only entertained the thought for a moment and didn't hold any hopes of it being realized. The difficulty of that was simply too high and unrealistic. Loud bangs rang out continuously, and rocks and sand flew everywhere. Jun Moxie sat underneath a tree not far away, leaning casually against its trunk as if he were watching a classic kung fu movie. His eyes were squinted with delight, and his mouth was spread widely with a grin. The only imperfect thing was that those fellows were all fighting with constipated faces and lowered heads, without a single piece of dialogue or sound effects, resulting in a rather dry experience for young Master Jun. But his expectations was truly a little too hard to meet. If Saint Emperors were to fight and curse at each other with each blow, would they still be Saint Emperors? Although the cause of the fight, and the fight itself were all nonsensical. Ha! All of a sudden, a clear sound like 2 hands clapping together rang out, and a sharp whistling sound filled the air. The intense sound surged out in all directions, as though countless sharp arrows. Then 2 more grunts sounded at the same time. Bai Qi Feng and He Ji Qiao both flew backwards, but they changed directions mid-flight, forcing themselves to charge forward again. The intense degree of the battle had risen to a whole new level again. At this time, He Ji Qiao's body stopped abruptly as he spread his arms and legs, before clapping them together instantly. Life and death are determined by the autumn winds. Heaven and earth are boundless and indistinct. In the instant that the words came out of his mouth, the originally harmonious spring weather in the entire area was changed, and the soft spring breeze turned into a cold and strong autumn wind filled with sorrow and frigid chill. The unique xian qi that He Ji Qiao sent out scattered far and wide. No matter how far it went, all the lush meadows there would wilt and turn yellow as soon as they came into contact. Nearby, the tall green trees suddenly swayed, and all the leaves turned into yellow lusters, which then gradually separated from the branches, and the pieces fell one after another. When they left the branch, there were still some green on them, but as they fluttered through the air, they became completely yellow, like a dance of golden leaves. The yellow leaves danced wildly in the air, slowly accumulating into a carpet of gold. A white figure stood silently in midair, his silhouette shrouded by the rain of leaves. He was dressed in hemp clothing and a high hair crown on his head, and his gaze was filled with desolation and bleakness. As he looked at this image, Jun Moxie had a sense of tranquility, as if he was staring at a beautiful transcendental painting. He couldn't help but to think of a Tang Dynasty poem. Swaying his head lightly, he recited, countless leaves rustle, fall and drift down and away bearing trees. Endlessly, the Yangtze flows, and with billows abounds, how truly enchanting awe. However, in this beautiful and enchanting image, there was a thick sense of desolate killing intent, a killing intent filled with gloom and forlornness. 10,000ly sorrowful autumn. Qiao's unique skill. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 872. Mysterious Girl. As the scenery transformed, turning into a scene of bleak autumn, Qiao's body swelled rapidly like a balloon, his black hair flowing behind him in a wild manner. His face was filled with chilly killing intent, the colors of autumn surging from him endlessly. Jun Moxie instantly understood, Qiao's 10,000ly sorrowful autumn not only had a supernatural infectious ability on other people's emotions, it also allowed him to draw out the life force of all the green plants for his own use when the skill was active. This meant that he could constantly replenish his strength at any time. In that way, he was practically in an invincible position. But his opponent did not have such an advantage. So even if their strengths were comparable at the start, if they fought on like this, the victor would be easily determined as the fight went on. Or perhaps one could say that the longer the fight went on, the greater his advantage would grow. Bai Qifeng's white robes billowed impressively as he raised his voice and shouted, "Good skill. Impressive. What a good 10,000ly sorrowful autumn. Now, take a look at my grotesque peak thrusting into the sky. 10,000 rugged ravine." His hands moved rapidly, and Bai Qifeng's body was hidden into a storm. It was as if he'd completely disappeared. Instead, the ground suddenly became uneven, and patches of small mountains grew out of the ground. Each mountain had sharp peaks, with sheer precipices. At the same time, countless huge rocks rained down from the sky. 10,000 li of autumn, endless scenery. How could a mere pile of rocks and mud be enough to cover it? Preposterous. Qiao scoffed coldly. The autumn winds rose up, and only a bleak desolation remained as far as the eyes could see. Although Bai Qifeng had also activated his unique ability and also ignited the unique power of heaven and earth that he'd comprehended, creating a huge transformation, he was still obviously disadvantaged in this fight. After activating 10,000 li of autumn, Qiao obviously had the upper hand. In the instant their bodies clashed together, they both disappeared into the special terrain they created. But against the impressive power of autumn, Bai Qifeng's grotesque peaks were suppressed heavily, and he could only hold on with great effort. Bai Qifeng was not the only person who knew this. The other Saint Emperors at the side could also see it clearly. With 5 Saint Emperors of the misty illusory manner here, just any one of them joining the fight would be enough to turn Bai Qifeng's situation around with ease. It wouldn't be a difficult thing to invert defeat into victory. But a fight between Saint Emperors was something that affected one's reputation and prestige. No matter what, it was inappropriate to interfere. Both sides would definitely be unable to accept a result like that, especially the losing side. They would rather be killed in battle than accept help. Although Bai Qifeng had fallen into a clear disadvantage here, he was still a long way away from being defeated. But if he wanted to turn the situation around, the only person who could interfere would be the other person whom he was fighting alongside with this time, Qiao Guofeng. No one else. As expected, Qiao Guofeng streaked across the sky with a loud shrilling sound behind him. Qiao Guofeng, who had always been experienced and steady, had not exerted his full strength against his opponent just now. Although the alliance between the 3 Holy Lands and misty illusory manor had gone south, The two sides' relationship had not dropped to the point of being enemies. So in the fight just now, he'd always been displaying a strength equal to his opponent. Otherwise, with his third-level Saint Emperor cultivation, while he might not be able to defeat Hai Wuya quickly, he would undoubtedly be able to maintain a position of absolute dominance once he used his full strength. But in this moment, Bai Qi Feng was already completely suppressed by He Ji Qiao, and it was difficult for the situation to be reversed by himself. Furthermore, He Ji Qiao now harbored great hatred towards Bai Qi Feng. As long as there was an opportunity, he would definitely not permit Bai Qi Feng to live. One could say that although Qiao Guofeng and Hai Wuya were similarly fighting now, they could only be considered to be sparring with each other. However, Bai Qi Feng and He Ji Qiao were truly engaged in a battle of life and death. In such a high-intensity situation, death could occur at any moment. Left with no choice and afraid that anything would happen to Bai Qi Feng, Qiao Guofeng could only use his true abilities. Because only by defeating Hai Wuya quickly could he go and rescue Bai Qi Feng. In the moment that Qiao Guofeng exploded with his full strength, the battle changed shockingly in an instant. It was no longer a fight for pride anymore. Rather, it had become a true fight for life or death. The life and death fight between the three holy lands and the misty illusory manor. Brother Hai, forgive me. Qiao Guofeng's voice rang out, and the winds and clouds instantly grew turbulent. As his body moved, the entire sky was suddenly filled with Qiao Guofeng's afterimages. Waves of powerful oppressive might pressed down, and Hai Wuya instantly felt his body grow stiff, and just moving his body became hard. Hai Wuya also shouted loudly, using his strongest Xian ability to break free. On the other side, He Ji Qiao, who was in the clear advantage, suddenly laughed aloud, and the two rushed towards each other. Hai Wuya scoffed with disdain, and raised his head with extreme anger. Misty illusory manner. So it's true that you're trying to kill the both of us here. Qiao Guofeng, you finally revealed the true intentions of your misty illusory manner. The two of us will not stay around to entertain you anymore. As for those weapons and random items, you can keep them to play. Haha, as high as the mountains and as long as rivers, we will ultimately meet again. Two shadows flashed and disappeared amidst the laughter. A loud boom rang out, and the lotus pond at the side of the battlefield, which hadn't been used for a long time, suddenly exploded, sending the countless amounts of dirt and mud which had been accumulating at the bottom of the pond for several hundred years into the sky. Like a huge curtain of water and mud, it fell down and covered the entire area. Everyone in the area were immediately faced with the danger of being pelted by the dirt. Hai Wuya and He Ji Qiao both laughed aloud coldly, and after that, there was no more sound. Quite clearly, these two had set off this blast as an evil move to get one last strike back and use it as a cover for themselves to retreat. The both of them were old demons who'd already lived for several hundred years. How would they possibly behave so rashly as to continue fighting a battle without any chances of victory? This matter was still only considered as a test to see what the misty illusory manor's attitude towards the Holy Lands was. If Qiao Guofeng and Bai Qi Feng really moved to kill them, that would be the most concrete proof of the misty illusory manor's wild ambition. At that time, the two of them would immediately escape the encirclement at all costs. In truth, they'd already left this path of retreat the moment they came here. The spiciest ginger was still the old ones. Comparing schemes and planning, the misty illusory manor which had secluded itself away from the world for so many years was still much weaker. But while they went all out to escape, the people from the misty illusory manor hadn't actually moved to pursue or kill them. Even Bai Qi Feng only wanted to teach them a harsh lesson, and had never once thought about killing them. Now that they've left so suddenly, the fight had ended. When the report was sent back, the misunderstanding between the three Holy Lands and Misty Illusory Manor would no longer have any possibility of being resolved. With the departure of the two Saint Emperors, the relationship between the four factions were completely shattered. At this time, young Master Jun, who was well within the range of the sludge and dirty water's downpour, was staring with wide eyes and open mouth with shock. Qiao Guofeng and the rest had all kinds of marvelous techniques which they could use to shield themselves from the dirt. They also had amazing movement techniques which they could use to dodge. So they naturally had nothing to be worried about. But young Master Jun couldn't. He had been watching the show, waiting for a scene where both parties killed each other or were ridden with injuries, with the intent of going forward to take advantage of the situation. But before he could react, the entire situation changed, and the rain of sludge and dirt came raining down. If he used the art of unlocking heaven's fortune to protect himself, no matter how careful he was, the faintest ripple of qi in the air would alert Qiao Guofeng and the rest to his presence. Then, his plans would be in danger of being foiled. Even his own safety might come into question. Those were 7 Saint Emperors. Even the current 9 Nether 14th young master wouldn't necessarily fare well against them. So, the only option for him was to endure. When the stinky sludge splattered against his body, Jun Moxie nearly threw up. That was dirt that had accumulated for hundreds of years. And it was even dirt from a lotus pond. Who knew what kind of rotten thing was down there, or what kind of decomposed animal carcass was mixed in this mud? That stench was clearly imaginable. Even with Jun Moxie's mental composition, and his high level of endurance honed by years of tough training as an assassin, it was still incredibly difficult to endure. Young Master Jun was still in a state of a beautiful dream where he had control over seemingly everything, when he was rudely awakened. To make things worse, he couldn't move a single muscle for fear of being found and could only forcefully stay there and get covered in the stinky dirt. In that moment, he felt like crying, but had no tears to cry. My grand plans. Woo! It's all gone. Dreams were always nice unless they were nightmares. But when the beautiful dream was over, and the reality was presented before one's eyes, it was usually a very cruel thing. It wasn't clear how long had passed. But when young Master Jun opened his eyes again, the area was already cleared long ago. Hai Wuya and He Ji Qiao had disappeared without a trace, and Qiao Guofeng and the rest had also vanished. That was a very reasonable thing actually. Qiao Guofeng and the others were lofty Saint Emperors. Since He Ji Qiao and Hai Wuya had already left, was there any more meaning in remaining here? It was a fortunate thing that they left so quickly as well. Young Master Jun's yin-yang escape cover had been accidentally broken by the accident. If they'd remained for a moment longer, young Master Jun would have been revealed. In the silence of the night, only young Master Jun remained among a pile of sludge. He sat under the tree, like a filthy mudskipper. Why is it like this? I'm so unlucky. Not only did I not get the opportunity to beat the dog when it's down, I was instead turned into a mudskipper. How did my perfect plan turn into this? Young Master Jun raised his head and lamented to the sky. After this round of sowing discord, there most likely wouldn't be anything more to gain. As he stood up, all the dirt on his body was shaken off with a burst of his qi. However, that disgusting stench still stuck to him stubbornly. Jun Moxie cursed bitterly as he flew away, looking for a river source. No matter what, he must take a thorough bath first. This was simply too smelly. Even when this elder brother went through a body and marrow cleansing, The dirt expelled from my body cannot even be compared to this smell. From the time that young Master Jun transmigrated to this world, this was the first time he'd ever encountered such a wretched thing. After running for a full 40, 50 li, was there finally some shimmering light in front. A clear little river flowed merrily, making light splashing sounds. Carrying a huge smile on his face, he dashed towards the river. Although the waters were not deep, it at least reached above the knee. Perhaps a little brook would be a more suitable name for it. Young Master Jun did not hesitate at all as he leapt into it like a fish. With a loud boom sound, a deep hole was smashed into the bottom of the river. In an instant, all the waters flowed backwards, pouring into this newly created hole. With a few quick moves, young Master Jun peeled all the clothes off his body and started scrubbing himself furiously. But when he poked his head out of the water again, he could still smell the intolerable stench wafting into his nose. Without pause, he washed himself 3 more times. Finally, he felt much better, and the air also seemed much fresher. Jun Moxie laid down in his newly created bathtub and sighed a few times as a self-mocking smile rose up in his heart. These clothes definitely cannot be worn. They can't even be kept anymore. That smell is truly. With a flick of his hand, he took out a set of clothes from the Hongjun pagoda. Looking at the clothes in his hand, he suddenly remembered. Oh feck! How did I become so dumb? There's still those items from the 9 nether first young master. The warm jade coarse silk, he still hadn't even taken it out yet. Ever since he returned, the important matters had simply piled up endlessly. To think that he'd actually forgotten about such an important thing. If he'd given it out earlier, perhaps Green Hunter wouldn't have. AI. My brains have completely stopped working. But if he'd given out the limited treasured clothes back then, would he have reserved a share for her? Thinking to this, Jun Moxie suddenly felt incomparably guilty in his heart. Jun Moxie blamed himself internally for some time, before stepping out of the river completely *tt Nike'd. After drying himself, he slowly pulled on his clothes, while contemplating on his next move. When he was halfway through his dressing, his soft voice suddenly rang out. You are Jun Moxie, right? That voice seemed to belong to a girl, but because it was oddly indifferent, he could not tell the age of the speaker. Who? Jun Moxie called out. He was greatly taken by surprise, but his body did not move, and he did not behave differently as he continued to put on his shirt at the original speed. This was actually his true reaction. As the king of assassins, the most important thing for someone of his line of work was to always stay calm no matter the situation. No matter what the matter was. It could not affect him. The more startling the situation was, the more he must not panic. Otherwise, the situation would only turn worse. A light sight rang out from a large tree near the river. Jun Moxie raised his head and looked up, only seeing the graceful silhouette of a girl standing atop the tree. Her body was long and slender, beautiful and charming. The hilt of a sword could be seen behind her petite shoulders. Her foot was stepping on the highest leaf on the crown of tree, and her figure bobbed lightly up and down with it like a fairy. She seemed like an otherworld immortal, unwilling to stain her feet with the dust of the mortal world. Just a thin piece of leaf was actually enough to support her entire weight. And from the looks of it, she seemed to be greatly at ease. Just the extraordinariness of this person's movement technique was enough to cause one to sigh endlessly with admiration. Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 873. 1000-year-old Demoness? because this girl's body was entirely still. Seeing that Jun Moxie had looked in her direction, the girl raised her head to the crescent moon and said in a confident manner, "That's right. Apart from Jun Moxie, there's likely no other genius of this level in this world. A third level venerable at the age of 18, how shocking. And how terrifying. Dare I ask who this lady is? How did you know me?" Jun Moxie asked with a faint smile as he sat down in a leisurely manner. Secretly, he'd already prepared himself. The moment there was any slight anomaly, he would immediately hide into the Hongjun Pagoda. Safety was his first priority. "Lady?" Her. The girl smiled lightly, her voice somewhat airy. Her skirt fluttered lightly in the wind, and under the illumination of the moonlight, her lithe figure looked even more vulnerable. It was as if a slightly larger wind would snap her willowy waist in two. Her voice was indifferent, without any emotion. "Just now, the conflict between the experts of the misty illusory manor and the Holy Lands was caused by you, right? This lady, you sure knows how to joke. Do you think that I have the ability to cause 9 great saint emperors to turn into enemies with each other?" Jun Moxie laughed aloud without a change in expression. He shook his head helplessly, as if the words of the other party was extremely ludicrous. But deep in his heart, Jun Moxie was actually gasping with shock. Just who was this girl? To actually say such words? Could it be? "Perhaps you don't know who I am." The girl smiled coldly with her back still turned to Jun Moxie as she continued. 800 years ago, there were some who called me all-seeing Rakshasa. In the war for seizing the heavens that year, the famed stealth techniques that those strange races were so adept with were completely worthless before me. Without exceptions. Their invisibility tricks instead made them easier for me to kill. Cold sweat poured out of Jun Moxie's body, not out of amazement at that girl's shocking eyesight, but 800 years ago. A great-great-great-granny. This tender-looking young girl was actually a living, breathing old freak. Even calling her a great-great-great-granny was probably not enough. At the very least, she would be the great-great-great-granny of a great-great-great-granny. If she'd participated in the war for seizing the heavens 800 years ago, wouldn't that mean that at that time, this girl had at least a venerable level of strength? Which meant to say that she was at least 80 to 100 years old 800 years ago. Jun Moxie's heart thumped heavily. Wouldn't that mean that this was a 1,000-year-old Demoness? The white-robed girl continued calmly. 300 years ago, in the other war for seizing the heavens, 15 of the strange races of supremacy enduring heavens died in my hands, directly resulting in their loss. She chuckled softly a few times and continued. The so-called steel techniques of this world are completely worthless in my eyes. Did you think that your little parlor trick can escape my eyes? Jun Moxie, you should understand now just how pitiful your feeble attempt at denying is to me. Lady, you're truly great and noble. You're the heroine of all mankind. When I return, I'll definitely erect a plaque in your honor, offering incense on it every day in hopes of your longevity. But this matter really has nothing to do with me. I don't even know what happened. Can you please don't malign me like that? How could Jun Moxie admit his involvement towards his own grand plan? Besides, you say that you've lived for over 1,000 years. How about I tell you that I'm the 9 nether first young master? Would you believe me? Since the time that it had appeared in this world, the yin-yang escape art has never been seen through before. Who are you to claim that you've seen through it? Bring out some evidence first. So young Master Jun naturally denied everything. All this young master did just now was soak in a bath. Is there anything wrong in that? Lady, could it be that I've committed some kind of crime by bathing here? Sharp-mouthed as expected. Jun Moxie. I've heard that you're a person who always does things in an extreme manner. But you're also a person who dares to admit to your own actions. An open and above-board young man. But after seeing you today, I'm greatly disappointed. You're just a little coward who dares to do, but doesn't have the courage to admit. The girl's voice was filled with great disappointment, and her tone grew somewhat colder. This lady, you've wounded me with your words. If it's something that I've done, this young master would usually never shirk responsibility. But if it wasn't me, no one can dream about pinning it on my head. Jun Moxie had a wronged expression on his face as he continued. I can't simply admit to every crime that people accuse me with, right? What logic is there in that, this lady? Am I right? Jun Moxie. After doing something, you actually don't dare to admit to it. Are you still a man? The girl snorted coldly and said. About this young master is even more speechless. Lady, I wasn't wearing anything when I was bathing just now. Whether I'm a man or not. Is there still a need for me to clarify? Such a long and large thing, could it be that you, Miss All-Seeing Rakshasa, did not see it? Does a woman have that thing? Jun Moxie chuckled in a roguish manner, continuing to deny. You're a 1,000-year-old Demoness? Then I'll just use my young age to play punk with you. You! Shameless! The girl's body shook and her voice grew sharp. This lady, we don't even know each other. You shouldn't go around accusing people like that. That's even more shameless. Jun Moxie did not budge a single inch. Against those despicable old bastards at the Three Holy Lands. If this young master deals with them like an honorable gentleman, perhaps even my bones would have turned to dust long ago. The girl's body shook, and she suddenly floated down from atop the tree, as if she was supported by a weightless cable. By the time her feet touched the ground, a full quarter of an hour had gone by. Moreover, she had hung in the air the whole time, and her actions could be said to be slow to the extreme. Jun Moxie's eyes shrunk, and for the first time, he somewhat believed the words that the girl had said. Just her shocking ability to hang in the air was not something that even Saint Emperor experts could do. Although Saint Emperors could hover in the air and could even cover tens of zhang of distance in an instant with ease, to be able to hang motionlessly in the air, and even speak while doing so, was definitely impossible for them. One must know that to hang in the air like that, one must hold on to the breath of air in their lungs. The moment they opened their mouth to speak, the breath of air would be gone. How could one still maintain their balance like that? But this girl had done it. And she'd done it with such ease. In the instant that she landed, Jun Moxie finally saw her true appearance. In a second, Jun Moxie's suspicion about her increased greatly again. Because this was clearly a young lady in her 20s at most. This girl was at the prime of her beauty. Her eyes were as clear as phoenixes, and her nose was sharp and cute. Her cherry-like lips, and the white and tender cheeks framed her face perfectly. Her hair was black and silky, and it was difficult to find even a single strand of white hair on her head. The look of innocence on her face was comparable to even Dugu Xiao. Just by standing there, she exuded a charm of nobility and pride. She was as a bright clear moon high up in the sky, not allowing herself to be touched by anyone. Her face had a faint shade of pink and shyness. It was as if she was feeling somewhat embarrassed after having seen Jun Moxie's nakedness. And this look of shyness was exactly the main reason for the doubt in Jun Moxie's heart. How can a 1,000-year-old Demoness possibly be so shy towards a man? Jun Xie's body shifted backwards as soon as she landed, maintaining a distance of 20 zhang. This was a relatively safe distance for him. At such a distance, as long as Jun Xie was wary enough, it was impossible for anyone to attack him. Because at this distance, all he needed to do was to move his thoughts, and he would be pulled into the Hongjun Pagoda before any attack could reach him. Although this girl was exceedingly beautiful, Jun Xie was completely unmoved. In fact, he even had the mind to avoid her as much as possible. He haven't even settled the problems with the girls at home. If he continued picking up more troubles, that would be too much. Although this was a world where it was common to have multiple wives and concubines. But just the few girls he had, whether it was Guan Qinghan, Dugu Xiao Yi, or Mei Shuiyan, all of them were strong characters who were fiercely jealous. Although these girls could pretend as if they didn't mind on the surface, but in their hearts, they definitely had their opinions. It's just that it hadn't been convenient for them to express their feelings thus far. In addition to these feelings, they each had their own reasons for not giving up on each other, which was why peace had barely been maintained. These girls could only be considered to have accepted each other. Jun Xie was also quite stressed out by the situation. The problem with Guan Qinghan had only just ended, but the matters of the rest also snapped closely at his heels, not allowing him a chance at a breather at all. As the saying goes, one monk carries 2 buckets of water on a pole, 2 monks carry 1 bucket between them, and 3 monks have no drinking water. Right now, young Master Jun was exactly in a having no water to drink state. Because there were simply too many monks at home. Normally, there's only 1 tigress in each family, but there were quite a few sitting in young Master Jun's backyard. And these were all the fiercest of the fiercest tigress. At this time, if Jun Xie so much as lifted his chin in the direction of this girl, a huge fight of the inner courts would be inevitable. So the moment he saw this beautiful girl, young Master Jun completely did not consider the problem of seniority and such. The first thing he thought of was, please do not fall in love with me. If there's anything about me that you fancy, please tell me. I promise to change it. Jun Xie, you're indeed a shameless little fellow. The girl stared at him and continued. By yourself. You stole Hai Wuya and He Ji Qiao's belongings. And at the most appropriate time, you even set Bai Qi Feng up. Those 3 poor fellows, to actually end up being played in the palms of a junior like you, causing such a huge misunderstanding between the 3 holy lands and misty illusory manner. Such behavior is truly insidious. Jun Xie, I don't wish to hurt you. I only hope that you come back with me and explain everything clearly before everyone. After that, I'll let you go. How about it? Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 874. All-Seeing Eye, Qiao Ying. Che, since you were watching by the side, why didn't you go and stop them? Wouldn't that be much simpler? Now that everything is over, you come and pin everything on me? Jun Xie snorted coldly, completely not believing her. Besides, this girl's words were absolutely ridiculous, like the naive thinking of a little girl. Clarify everything and let me go? This was simply a daydream. Even if one thought would there be *TT, it was completely impossible. Jun Xie definitely could not go back. And the Saint Emperors would also definitely never let Jun Xie leave. Clarify? What's there to clarify? If you were really watching from the side, all you needed to do was to catch me. Wouldn't that be better than any explanations? I naturally had my own reasons for not stopping the fight. The girl's face grew red, and she snorted with some anger. Her tender white cheeks were flushed. But upon realizing that her old problem had resurfaced again, she coughed unnaturally and resumed her graceful behavior. The method that Jun Moxie had mentioned was undoubtedly the most effective. How would she not know that? It was simply because she had some special reasons that prevented her from being able to do anything at that time, which was why Jun Moxie's plan had succeeded. Right now, both sides had already greatly hurt their essence energy in this battle, and their relationship had also completely broken down. Even if she stood out now and said, "Both sides, please stop fighting," all this was a scheme by that despicable little fellow Jun Moxie. Without any evidence or witnesses, who would believe her? Besides, in everyone's heart, Jun Moxie had already died by Zhan Mu Bai's hands long ago. What schemes could a dead man play? A person that had died some time ago suddenly appeared, and with the strength of a third-level venerable, schemed against 10 saint emperors and caused them to fight each other? That was surely too ludicrous. So she was exceedingly helpless in this matter, and vexed. But in that moment, her expression only caused Jun Moxie to think of one thing. So it's just a little brat. Jun Moxie couldn't be blamed, because her current expression was really no different from a little naive child who knew nothing about the world. So Jun Moxie grew less and less convinced of her previous words. His mind spun, and he instantly decided to toy with her a little. Let me voice that reason of yours for you. You clearly did not find them pleasing to your eyes, so you instigated them to fight each other. I see now that not only are you good at bullshitting, this entire plot was created by you. It must be you. Only a 1,000-year-old peerless expert like you could possibly have the means to play these saint emperors in your palms like that. I finally understand now. The entire truth has been revealed. Young Master Jun had a look of realization on his face as he turned his eyes on her with rage. It must be you who stole Hai Wuya and He Ji Qiao's weapons, causing their hatred to deepen. Then you caused them to fight each other. What an evil girl you are. Why did you do that? Why? Young Master Jun's expression was somewhat pained as he continued in a bitter tone. The three Holy Lands had given their all for the sake of the people and world peace for over 10,000 years. They're the heroes of Xian continent. They are the moral compass which we should follow. But to think that you would be so despicable as to plot against them. What's your purpose? Could it be that you're actually a spy sent by the strange races to destroy the peace of our continent? Venomous tongue of a viper, and poisonous sting of a wasp. The toxicity of these cannot be compared to the heart of a woman. Today, I've finally seen for myself. A mere little girl can actually be so dangerous and so toxic as to plot against the heroes of our Xian continent. Such behavior is truly shocking. Why? Just why, what has our education system become, to actually? AI. Young Master Jun shook his head and lamented loudly, as if his heart was filled with great pains. You. The girl's eyes had widened to its extreme, and she was so angered that she even started stuttering. Her little face grew completely red, and her tongue was completely tied up, rendering her incapable of speech. After having lived for over 1,000 years, this was the first time she'd ever met such a despicable human. He'd clearly been caught and accused, but he actually still managed to bite back, even going as far as to throw all her accusations back at all, while making it sound even more severe. In fact, he'd even turned around and claimed that he was the defender of the human race. Just what kind of person is this? Shamelessness, should also have a limit, right? Jun Moxie. There's no need for you to deny so painstakingly anymore. She took a deep breath and said, finally managing to calm down. However, her chest was still heaving heavily as she forced herself to speak in her usual tone. I saw the entire thing with my own eyes. It's useless no matter what else you say. As long as I catch you and find the weapons on you, the truth will immediately be revealed. Jun Moxie laughed aloud, to the point where even his tears were almost flowing out of his eyes. Clutching his stomach, he forcefully steadied himself and said, you said you've lived for over 1,000 years. Right? Even Hai Wuya and the rest are just little brats to you, right? Then in that case, may I make a simple inference, your strength should far surpass those Saint Emperors? That is only natural. With their mere bit of ability, how could they be compared to me? The girl snorted and said, her voice carrying a hint of pride. She thought that Jun Moxie finally understood her prowess and had finally grown afraid. Her heart relaxed, and she grew happier instantly. Since you acknowledged my first statement, then, let me make another inference. Those people were all Saint Emperor level experts, and I'm just a mere third level venerable. Since you were so much stronger than them, why didn't you stop them or try to catch me when you saw me plotting against them, exposing my plans? Looking at this angle, it should be logical to say that you have ulterior motives, right? Jun Moxie smiled lightly and said, what, nonsense. All of that is wrong. If not for that bestarred 9 nether 14th young master watching me the entire way, would I have let your plan succeed? Did you really think that those weird tricks of yours were really so formidable? She finally exploded with rage. The 9 nether 14th young master? He's involved in this matter too. This time, Jun Moxie was truly stunned. Could it be that that fellow had never left, and had been following behind him all along? The little girl snorted coldly, not replying. This girl's name was Qiao Ying. With regards to her words, none of it were fake. She was born with the innate all-seeing eye, which was more commonly known as the eye of yin yang. As she grew up, especially with the advancement of her cultivation, this innate ability would also improve with her cultivation, rising in rank and strength. Coincidentally, a senior of one of the Holy Lands discovered Qiao Ying's innate all-seeing eye one day, and that it had a miraculous ability. So, he mimicked the strange races' stealth techniques and used it to test the little girl. As expected, she was capable of seeing through the strange race's stealth techniques. As expected, that senior was overjoyed. From then on, Qiao Ying's incredibly lonely and bitter life began. Precisely because her all-seeing eye was the greatest weapon against the strange races, the Heaven Saint Palace had taken her in early and made her their protector. Disregarding the costs, they gave her a piece of the 7-colored holy fruit and exquisite lotus every 500 years, maintaining her life force and allowing her to deal with the war for seizing the heavens. At this point, she was already 1.100 years old. She was a legitimate 1,000-year-old Demoness. Just by eating a 7-colored holy fruit and an exquisite lotus once every 500 years, one's youth and cultivation would be extended by 500 years. One could easily imagine the terrifying state of her current cultivation. To date, she'd already eaten 3 7-colored holy fruits and exquisite lotuses. Her own 1.100 years of cultivated energy, adding on 1.500 years of Xian Qi, her current strength was equivalent to a person who'd cultivated for 2.600 years. Judging based on the depths of her cultivation alone, she could already be considered as the #1 person alive right now. Even the 9 nether 14th young master was likely beneath her. However, with benefits, there are naturally drawbacks as well. Although she could see through all concealment techniques at birth, there was a very obvious flaw to this ability. That was, when she utilized her all-seeing eye, the energy consumption was over 10 times that of a regular battle. Every time she used it, she would need to recover for a very long time. In the two war for seizing the heavens previously, she'd used her all-seeing eye for extremely long periods, resulting in her essence energy being greatly hurt. This all-seeing eye could be said to be a terrifying, double-edged sword. If not because of the war for seizing the heavens, she would likely have destroyed it long ago. This kind of ability might be strong, but with just a little thought, it was easy to understand. The all-seeing eye was something that could see through yin and yang. In that case, one could easily imagine, in a place which seemed to be normal and empty, it would be extremely crowded and strange in her eyes. And these people were all beings that shouldn't belong to this world. These were ghosts that had already departed from life. This kind of feeling was completely enough to drive a strong person insane, let alone a naive little girl of tender age. Not to mention, she'd been living with it for over 1,000 years. Perhaps one could say that the fact that Qiao hadn't gone mad or collapsed completely yet meant that her mental fortitude was extremely strong. And for the sake of the all-seeing eye, for the sake of the war for seizing the heavens, Qiao had even given up the most basic happiness of all girls, the right to marry and have a family. She couldn't. Because the most basic condition to keeping the all-seeing eye was to maintain a pure in-body absolute purity. The moment she lost her virginity, the all-seeing eye's magic would also be gone. Thus, the love that ordinary girls could enjoy, and the sweet talking under the moonlight that all girls looked forward to, was all fated to be beyond Qiao Ying's grasp. She could only live out a lonely existence, maintaining a heart of ice. One could say that this girl called Qiao Ying had, for the sake of the Xian continent, and the sake of the peace of the world, truly sacrificed the most. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 875. Bathing, Peeping. To watch her own family and friends grow old and die of sickness and age, yet being unable to do anything about it. Seeing her peers starting families and having children and grandchildren, dying peacefully and resting after having lived a fulfilling life, while she herself could only stay guard over the world like that, enduring long years of loneliness. To a beautiful girl like that, how cruel. But she couldn't simply break down and be unable to endure, because she was still needed for the war for seizing the heavens. The world needed her. If there were no Qiao Ying in the war for seizing the heavens, who knew how many people would die? Perhaps they might even be defeated once, or more times. In order to maintain her state of mind, she had spent almost all her time atop the pillar of Heaven's mountain, quietly living by herself. At that level of elevation, even ghosts and spirits would not be able to reach her. Time flowed by like that. And now, she was already an old woman of over 1,000 years old. But her heart was still as clear as water and incomparably pure. One could say that this 1,000-year-old senior was simply a naive young lady in the matters of the world. Because her memory of the world only consisted of a few short years. And that was only the memory of her childhood to adulthood. After that, all she'd been doing was train in seclusion, participate in the war for seizing the heavens, and then return to training again. This time, with the Heaven Saint Palace mobilizing their people to protect the Holy Land's forces, Qiao Ying, who had always stayed away from the matters of the world, unexpectedly requested to go over. and her insistence was even pretty strong. Before this, she had been staying atop the pillar of Heaven's mountain for 400 straight years. Left with no choice and knowing that Qiao Ying's all-seeing eye had improved along with her cultivation to the point where she could now control it at will, they accepted her request. But because of the importance of this matter, they'd sent 2 more experts to accompany alongside her. Nothing could happen to Qiao Ying. After entering Chrysanthemum City, the pure-hearted Qiao Ying wholeheartedly carried out her mission, and her spiritual sense was practically attached to the few Saint Emperor's body. So the moment there was an anomaly, she instantly rushed over. And the timing that she arrived was exactly the same time when Jun Moxie was pranking Bai Qi Feng and stealing Hai Wuya's belongings. There weren't any traces of the perpetrator, but because of the anomaly, she instantly thought of the stealth techniques of the strange races. So she activated her all-seeing eye. In an instant, all of young Master Jun's sneaky actions had been revealed before her eyes. The yin-yang escape art was a true godly ability. If it reached a high enough level, even the all-seeing eye would not be able to detect it. However, young Master Jun's current level was too low. Against Qiao Ying's 2.500 years worth of cultivation strength, the yin-yang escape art, which had never failed before, was finally exposed for the first time. At that time, Qiao Ying was just about to call out and warn the Saint Emperors, exposing young Master Jun's scheme, when a chilly voice suddenly sounded out beside her ear. "Don't make any sound. If you so much as make a single squeak, this young master will have no choice but to do what I have to do." At the same time, a cold 9 nether frost blade was pressed against her neck. The moment she heard this voice, Qiao Ying instantly knew that this person was the 3 Holy Lands' greatest enemy. The 9 nether 14th young master. She did not doubt the identity of that person at all. Because only the 9 nether 14th young master would have such a unique item like the 9 nether frost blade. And only the 9 nether 14th young master would have such a strange yin qi. Most importantly, with her current strength, apart from the 9 nether 14th young master, almost no one else could possibly have the ability to restrain her. Even if it were a sneak attack. At the very least, she had this much confidence. And right now, she'd clearly already landed in the palms of this strong enemy. She could only blame everything on her lack of worldly experience. Otherwise, even if Qiao Ying's strength was not enough to fight head-on against the 9 nether 14th young master, she had over 2.000 years worth of cultivation energy in her body. No matter what, it shouldn't have been so easy for someone to sneak behind her and subdue her so easily. She had simply been too shocked and captivated by Jun Moxie's movements. In addition, she'd been too anxious to warn the Saint Emperors, and her attention had been completely absorbed, which led to her not noticing her surroundings. In addition, she'd been extremely enraged by young Master Jun's sneaky actions, allowing the anger to cloud her mind, which resulted in her being sneaked on by the 9 nether 14th young master so easily. "Don't move a finger. Just sit down and watch quietly. A grand battle like this is exceedingly hard to come by. If you ruin the show, this young master will have to do something very regretful." The 9 nether 14th young master had continued in a bland tone. Qiao Ying clearly felt a pair of eyes gleaming brightly behind her head, blazing with great interest as a light chuckle sounded in her ears. "That little brat is truly sinister. This young master likes him to death. Good. Good. Toy those hypocrites to death. How did this young master not think of such a brilliant idea?" As Jun Moxie had guessed, the 9 nether 14th young master had indeed been following behind him all along. For such an outstanding young man to appear all of a sudden, how would the 9 nether 14th young master not feel suspicious? No matter what, He was determined to dig out everything about Jun Moxie. With the 9 nether 14th young master's powerful strength and the huge gap in power between him and Jun Moxie, he very naturally became the only person in this world who could tail young Master Jun without being discovered. Like that, young Master Jun played his tricks on the front, and the 9 nether 14th young master followed behind him, watching. The more he watched, the happier he became. He simply felt that this kid's methods were truly vicious and too suited to his tastes. After that, he saw Jun Moxie disappear without a trace a few times, and then successfully use his so-called free and natural physique to turn Zhan Mu Bai and the misty illusory manner against each other, and was subsequently there to plot to once again rile up Hai Wuya and He Ji Qiao to completely fall out with the misty illusory manner. All these actions caused the 9 nether 14th young master to become more and more interested in this young brat. Although he also saw the rascal using his name to scare Zhan Mu Bai, the 9 nether 14th young master did not have any intentions to expose him. He followed young Master Jun around as if he were watching a grand drama, all the while exclaiming in delight in his heart. When Jun Moxie suddenly took out the 9 nether frost blade, he was finally sure of one thing: this brat definitely had some relations to that 9 firmament first old master fellow. At this point, he finally understood why this fellow had been able to recognize him and why he had such a unique stealth technique. To think that all of this originated from that 9 firmament first old master. Just thinking of that name had caused the 9 nether 14th young master to feel an annoying ache in his balls. This daddy is only ranked 14th, but you dare to claim yourself as number 1? I'm 9 nether. And you're 9 firmament. I'm a young master. And you're the old master. You're the heavens and I'm hell. Feck. This is simply too much. However, the 9 nether 14th young master was completely helpless in this matter. Because the name 9 firmament first old master was apparently bestowed by the 3 holy lands. And the reason for that was actually because of him, hoping that he would go looking for this 9 firmament first old master for trouble. How can I, the wise and handsome 9 nether 14th young master, possibly make such an elementary mistake? Therefore, the 9 nether 14th young master was determined to not fall for that trick. Instead, he would look for the 3 holy lands to settle the scores. They are the real source of all the anger. Besides, the 9 firmament first old master had once helped him break the seal. Regardless of his original intentions, he could be considered half a benefactor. Moreover, the 2 of them had a prior agreement among themselves. As for this little junior who was using his name to fool around, he could also be considered as the successor of an old friend. Not mentioning the other stuff, just taking into account this intense classic battle that he got to enjoy so much, he would let the kid impersonate to his heart's content. If such satisfying scenes could be concocted a few more times, then it doesn't matter even if you impersonate me a few more times. Moreover, this rascal's actions all sat very well with him. The more fragmented the 3 holy lands and the misty illusory manner became, the better. It would be best if their relationship could worsen even more thoroughly. That would be the most satisfying thing. That way, he could deal with them one by one. So, how could the 9 nether 14th young master possibly allow Qiao to spoil such a good thing? It was naturally impossible. Watching helplessly as Jun Moxie created chaos and the 9 Saint Emperors all turned on each other to the point of going out to fight a grand battle, Qiao had nearly gone crazy from anxiousness. She was practically on the verge of going all out to resist, when the 9 nether 14th young master unexpectedly let her go. Smiling lightly, the 9 nether 14th young master said, "Not bad indeed. Looks like this brat truly has some skills in acting. There's basically no need for this young master to worry about the matters after that. I'll return to recuperate and prepare for a big fight. Otherwise, all the efforts this kid made would go to waste. After saying that, the 14th young master suddenly disappeared without a trace, leaving a mortified Qiao who nearly snapped her teeth from grinding them too hard. She rushed out to try to salvage the situation, flying out of the city to search. When she finally reached, the battle between the Saint Emperors had concluded long ago. Just when she was wondering how she should clear up the situation, she discovered the desolate-looking and foul-smelling young Master Jun cursing as he ran along. Just like that, she followed silently behind him, determined to dig out the person behind the scenes. But unbelievably, this stinky little brat was actually the main culprit behind the entire incident. Who would have thought that after following him for a while, the little fellow would suddenly strip himself completely naked without a care in the world and jump into the water? Qiao had been observing him extremely carefully, watching him with widened eyes and heightened senses in case she lost him in a moment of carelessness. So when young Master Jun stripped himself with such great speed, she'd seen everything very clearly, in great detail. In all her 1,000 years of purity, when had she ever seen such a scene? In an instant, her entire face flushed red, and her body grew feverish. She could only turn around hurriedly, cursing lowly under her breath. Shameless. Rascal. Hooligan. Despicable. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 876. Which part of me do you love? I'll change. In terms of cultivation and age, this girl could really be counted as a 1,000-year-old Demoness, but her composure towards certain things were rather ordinary, and may not necessarily be stronger than other regular girls, or perhaps was even incomparable. But this was due to her unique background and experiences, and nothing could be done about it. She had finally waited till that dirty guy was done washing himself. She waited a while more after hearing him get out of the water. Qiao only turned around to look when she estimated that he had already finished putting on his clothes. There's no big deal about looking, but she just had to so coincidentally look at the sight of young Master Jun in his full naked glory on the bank, looking at the moon, his built tall and imposing. This fellow still hadn't put on his clothes even after so long. She had already experienced seeing such an embarrassing sight twice consecutively. Right now, young Master Jun's front and back were already not much of a secret to her. Great Beauty Qiao was so angry she was about to faint. How can this guy be this shameless? Don't tell me he is an exhibitionist? If she had asked this, young Master Jun would definitely have lots to say. What's wrong? I'm dirty all over, but I'm not allowed to bathe. Since I'm bathing, am I not supposed to take off my clothes? After I'm done bathing, I must let the water droplets on my body dry off, right? Or else how am I supposed to wear my clothes? It's in the middle of the night, and in this wilderness. What is wrong with me being exposed and naked? And who would have thought that in the middle of the night, in this deserted wilderness, there would be a beauty waiting for me to get out of my bath? Who is it that is more shameless here? Is it really this young master? With young Master Jun's personality, if he had known that there was a beauty peeping on his shower, he might just refuse to put on his clothes. I'm a big man. It's a pretty good thing to have a woman, and a beautiful woman at that, who is willing to be admiring my body. There's no loss in showing off a little. And thus, with one party intentional and one party unintentional, the situation has escalated to this awkward stage. On the riverbank, a man and woman glaring at each other. Young Master Jun was thinking of how to get out of this. His yin-yang escape has been seen through by this person before him, If he escaped using the Hongjun Pagoda, then he really didn't have many hidden cards left. And that great beauty Qiao was thinking of how to capture this guy back and make him admit to his crimes honestly. She really didn't have any evidence. Young Master Jun, who had just worn his pants, was in deep thoughts. His top half was still exposed. The thought of 9 Nether 14th young master who had always been following behind him, but not taking any actions. Something like this that was beyond his expectations. Would it affect his future plans? The more he thought, the more he couldn't help but feel at a loss as to whether to laugh or cry. Here he was, exerting all his might as a fox that exploited the tiger's might, blatantly using 9 Nether 14th young master's name to stir all the trouble he can. And at one point, he used some tricks to toss 9 Nether 14th young master into the flame as well. Only now did he realize that this fellow that he had always been trying to frame had actually been following behind him, watching his every single move clearly and carefully. What is going on? That person definitely doesn't care about this thing because of his profound strength. But him not being bothered is one thing. But it was another for Jun Moxie to be sneakily implicating him along. They may seem to be the same thing, but they are two separate matters. If 9 Nether 14th young master comes to settle scores with me in the future, with my current strength, it really isn't enough. Jun Moxie laughed bitterly. It seems like since my rebirth in this second life, everything has been going too smoothly. I had thought too lightly of all the outstanding heroes in the world. Tonight seemed like it was all within my control, but in fact, 3 enormous slip-ups have arose. First, the martial showdown that he had directed. Saint Emperor versus Saint Emperor. The misty illusory manner overpowering their opponent with 7-2. He had thought that those 2 Saint Emperors would have no room for escape, but he didn't expect that they were even more scheming beyond his expectations. Not only did they not fall into a disadvantageous position, they had turned the tables around with a single sludge rain and successfully escaped. And had even drowned this director along with it. Second, to think that there was someone like this in the 3 Holy Lands. With the legendary, all-seeing eye that saw through his yin-yang escape that had never failed. And had a clear understanding of all his previous actions. And the greatest slip-up was the third. Him using the 9 Nether 14th young master's name to direct the great show today. But he was completely unaware that every single act of his was in the eye of the original main lead. And even, without this original main lead's help, he may have been caught by the enemy a long time ago. This seemingly almost perfect performance was, in hindsight, full of flaws. And he had even owed a great favor. A great failure. Young Master Jun turned his gaze to Qiao Ying. Only to realize that this girl was just standing there, her brows furrowing. As if she was considering something that was difficult to figure out. Her expression switching between perplexed, lifeless, angry, and melancholic, which all went to show that her mind was preoccupied. This old senior was lost in thoughts at a time like this. Young Master Jun, who was originally feeling bitter, didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He seemed to have a great deal of experience with old seniors, but such a muddle-headed old senior was a first. That young lady, if you do not have anything else, then I'll be taking my leave. Jun Moxie coughed. When facing this woman, he couldn't associate her with all those white-bearded old men of 100 years or treat them the same. Although she claimed to be way older than those 100-year-old old geezers, he didn't know how true that was. Take your leave? No. You can't leave. Qiao Ying instantly responded, being snapped back to reality by Jun Moxie's sentence. Her cheeks burned as she realized that she had gotten lost in her thoughts at such a crucial juncture. She coughed to conceal it and quickly regained that simple and elegant attitude again. She said indifferently, full of the air of a senior. You still can't leave, yet. You haven't given me an acceptable explanation. How can you just leave as you like? Jun Moxie acted as if he was frightened, waving his hands before him. Lady, I am really innocent. I didn't do anything to you either. Why must I be responsible? You just have to be responsible. You created something like this. Don't tell me that you shouldn't be responsible for it. Qiao had not realized the trap Jun Moxie laid in his words. Seeing Jun Moxie cowering in fear, she couldn't help but feel proud of herself. I knew it. I knew that one could not be too handsome. Jun Moxie looked wordlessly into the sky. In a bawling tone, he cried, Heavens! Earth! Is it a sin because I am too handsome? Why is this? My body come from my parents. I really had no choice. It is not my intention to look like this. Why must I be chased around by women every day asking me to be responsible? Qiao Ying was stunned. She only felt her face turning redder and burning up. This jerk. Jun Moxie looked at her mournfully as he cried pitifully. Sister. I never imagined that. I tried to be this low profile. But someone as amazing as you was still willing to wait for me to come out of my bathe and peep on my body, all for the sake of making me responsible. The heavens are really toying with me. I am grateful for your misplaced adoration, but I am really incapable of bearing your feelings. I know I am hurting you when I say it so straightforwardly. But it is a better thing, for everyone, regardless of you or me, to have you acknowledge this fact as early as possible. You this lecher. What nonsense are you spouting? Who was waiting for you to come out of your bathe? Qiao Ying's fake aloofness was long gone. Her entire body was convulsing with anger. Her face pale. She only felt like she was about to faint from looking at this shameless person before her. Lady. I really am not lying. I really am a man with family. And I have more than one concubine. Even if you don't mind. They would. There is no end to tangled feelings. But I still wish that lady can still be wise and put an end to this wrong affinity. Jun Moxie announced in a serious, sorrowful tone. Then his expression changed again, into one as if he wished to cry but no tears would fall. He hammered away at his chest. Lady. Just tell me which part of me did you fall in love with? I'll change. I'll definitely change. Is that not enough? Change my ass. Qiao Ying only felt like her chest was about to explode any time. She rose into the sky with a flash, instantly appearing on top of Jun Moxie. Her two hands were aimed at Jun Moxie's face. The great beauty Qiao felt that it was an unforgivable thing if she still didn't hit this wicked mouth until it was swollen. Ayaya. Jun Moxie floated into the air, moving away as he cried loudly. Lady, I know that it is my fault for not being willing to accept your feelings. It is my karma for you to feel for me. But I really cannot respond to your hopes. What should I do? I also know that beating and scolding are a way of showing your love. Lady, you are such a great beauty, a gorgeous woman. It is difficult to find a three-legged toad in this world. But there are plenty of men out there in this world. Why must you torture yourself by putting your feelings onto this man who has a wife? It is not worth it. Not worth it. Please just learn to get over it. Qiao Ying bit her lips, giving chase. She just refused to speak anymore. She was afraid that the moment she opened her mouth, all the curse and swear words she had never uttered before in her entire life would come spewing out. The wind blew. And Jun Moxie was like a fish in water, sliding and avoiding with ease. Not feeling any pressure. He couldn't help but feel like this senior did not really match her name. But every force exerted from this woman was mighty and powerful. And such immense strength only effect in the surrounding radius of 10 zhang. The leaves of the beyond this did not even budge. Just this skill alone was definitely above those saint emperors. And even, possibly not beneath the 9 nether 14th young master that day, although her control of it was still a little inferior. But why was it that her techniques were this poor when she had a xian qi like this? Jun Moxie was astonished as he dodged along. A glint of pride flashed in Qiao Ying's eyes. I'll allow you behave arrogantly for a while. When my inescapable net forms the ultimate prison, it'll really be impossible for you to escape. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 877. Inescapable net. Can't stop me from escaping in a flash. This set of skills Qiao Ying was unleashing was known as the inescapable net. There was a connection between each strike that was delivered, in which an airtight cage would be formed, covering from the sky to the ground. Even the most superior of techniques were useless in a dimension like this. Although Qiao Ying could use the all-seeing eye to see where Jun Moxie actually was, she felt that this guy's techniques seemed vastly different from the strange races, and was even harder to decipher. After the strange races used their techniques, she could still see a clear human body in her eyes. But when this guy did it, she could only see a faint silhouette at the very best. There was a certain amount of preparation time required if she was to use more powerful tactics. And this guy was too alert. He'd be able to notice the moment she was activating it, and take that opportunity to escape. He was so agile. Although her agility was also extraordinary, but it was still inferior in comparison. And he just had to be well versed in techniques, able to utilize at his will, so she really did not have full confidence in capturing him. The best bet was to proceed in a way similar to the boiling frog experiment. Using inescapable net, this seemingly gentile and mellow skill to make him slowly lower his guard. And when he realized it, he wouldn't be able to move or escape. It would be too late. The inescapable net was a unique skill that the seniors of the Holy Lands created to counter the strange races' techniques. There was a connection in the qi between each strike that could locate the location of the strange races. Even though they were still hidden and concealed, they would be able to attack their invisible enemies with the guide of the qi. Just that this particular skill's basic prerequisite for xian qi was simply too high, so even if it was a saint emperor who used the inescapable net, all their xian qi was only enough to use it once. And after using it, they'd be completely drained and would usually perish with the enemy. Which meant that it would be a life for a life when using this skill. But right now, this set of skill was easily and effortlessly used by Qiao Ying and her immense foundations of xian qi. A cold smirk lingered on Qiao Ying's lip. She sketched a faint line and left a snowy white palm print. And that enormous strength just slowly lingered in the air, coagulating, and slowly gathered towards the center. Lady, are you tired? It is very draining for you to be like this. Why don't you take a drink? Jun Moxie chuckled, still dodging about with ease. He could already tell that this opponent before him, although her strength was profound to an unimaginable state, she had no idea how to use it. Each strike was hitting to empty spots. How could she destroy the enemy battling like this? And this old senior who claimed to have lived for 1,000 years seemed to be even more pure and easily provoked than a young little girl. So Jun Moxie's honeyed tongue became of use again. Make her agitated while it's early and then find an opportunity to quickly escape. Otherwise, Having an old Demoness like this that can see through my yin-yang escape following me. This feeling is too scary. Qiao scoffed. Her strikes instantly gaining speed. Although she still couldn't hit him. Jun Moxie bent backwards and dodged a strike. He was just about to tease her. But he suddenly noticed that the surrounding air had turned solid in an instant. A feeling as if there was a wall that stretched from heaven down to earth. Although it was not a direct imprisonment like the world cage. It was another type of imprisonment that gradually restricted your mobility space. Shoot. Young Master Jun forcefully ducked 2 more times and finally became completely unable to move. Qiao finally stopped. A cold smirk on her face. Jun Moxie. How is my inescapable net? Is it really useless? Weren't you full of comments? Why don't you tell me a couple of sentences now? Indeed. It is not bad. To think that this seemingly utterly useless skill is actually a despicable skill. As expected. It is impressive. Jun Moxie's body was frozen in the air. But that annoying smirk still graced the corner of his lips. He taunted. But, using so much strength only to create a chi field similar to World Cage, don't you think it is a bit troublesome? You are not wrong. This is indeed similar to the World Cage. And has the similar intentions of perishing together as well. But this cage is completely created out of Xian Qi and did not use any power of heaven and earth. This skill is intentionally and specially created to deal with monsters like you who can conceal yourselves. Jun Moxie. The treatment you are receiving right now is the same as the strange races. The supremacy enduring heavens. You should be feeling proud. Feck. Don't compare this young master to trash. What should I be proud of? You are really an irritating woman. How dare you offend the biggest taboo in this young master's heart? Jun Moxie yelled. Furious. So what if I offended it? Qiao scoffed. A pleased look appeared on her face. She moved over. Lifted her hand. About to slap down harshly on Jun Moxie's face. Weren't you really capable of dodging? Why don't you dodge? Jun Moxie stared at her palm expressionlessly. Before it landed on his cheek, Qiao had unexpectedly hesitated. As long as you are willing to promise to go back with me to clarify the misunderstandings with the 4 factions. I promise not to hit you. And after this matter, I will release you and let you leave unscathed. How is that? No can do. This young master would rather die than give in. Jun Moxie glared. But I really do not wish to hurt you. My hands had never been tainted with the blood of humans. Aside from the strange races, I do not wish to harm any life on the continent. Qiao bit her bottom lip and said, there is no big hatred between you all. And besides, you had said so earlier. They are heroes of the war for seizing the heavens, and you clearly also despise the strange races. Why can't we work together? Why don't we work together and return peace to this world? Even if no one will remember us, we would have ultimately done our part for this continent. Jun Moxie. Consider it. I swear in the name of the all-seeing Rakshasa, that as long as you are willing to mend your ways, I will definitely assure the safety of your life, and let you leave unscathed. No one from the 3 holy lands shall dare to lay their hands on even a single strand of hair on you. As long as you are willing to consent, I can also forget all about the matter just now where you offended me and pretend it never happened. How is that? After saying this, her eyes looked at Jun Moxie in anticipation. The strange races were good at their techniques of concealment. But if we have an expert that is even more superior than them at such techniques, this is great news for the war for seizing the heavens. So Qiao Ying, who had been used to always considering for the bigger picture, still ultimately decided to use all her might to convince Jun Moxie to mend his ways. You are really too noble. But also too naive. Jun Moxie was a little amazed. This woman before him was really considering for the sake of the world and the war for seizing the heavens wholeheartedly, with no desire for credit. This was really worthy of admiration. She was just like Mei Shui Yan of the past. Or perhaps even worse. How many of such people were there truly, someone like this, in the three holy lands? If everyone was like you, then there would be no war for seizing the heavens in this world. Jun Moxie said indifferently. The reputation of a hero is not a reason to enjoy privileges, and protecting the world is also not a reason for you to kill indiscriminately. The war for seizing the heavens is also not a Vanity Fair, but it's a pity that although the people of the three holy lands have the greatest responsibilities for war for seizing the heavens, but even more than that, the responsibility for their selfish desires, massacre of innocent lives, cruelty, and lack of conscience. Although I, Jun Moxie, am no good person, and am also willing to do my part for war for seizing the heavens, but no matter what, I'm full of disdain for joining forces with them. Qiao Ying's face darkened. A look of pity in her eyes as she looked at Jun Moxie. Since things have reached this point, there is no longer any more room for negotiation. I cannot just watch as the four factions fall apart just because I admire you. Pardon me. Jun Moxie chuckled, a gentle look on his face. You and her are really similar. The way you talk, I can tell that it is really coming from your sincere heart. So, this young master will also not make things difficult for you. Farewell. With a flash, in that airtight cage of the inescapable net formed from pure Xian Qi, he suddenly vanished. Qiao Ying was taken aback, instantly activating her all-seeing eye, looking around in the surroundings. Everywhere was deserted, and there was no trace of anyone else. Jun Moxie had really vanished into thin air. Qiao Ying had saw it clearly. Young Master Jun did not use any techniques this time, but he just mysteriously vanished. What sort of skill is this? And there was one more strange thing. Every time she used her all-seeing eye in the secular world, she would always see countless of spirits and ghosts wandering about. But this time, she did not see anything but floating mist everywhere. What is this? Could all the ghosts and spirits of the world have completely disappeared? She couldn't help but feel a little relieved thinking about this. Although she had immense strength that was unparalleled in this world and was capable of seeing all supernatural, but ultimately, she was still a woman. Women, or even majority of the world, would be nervous and scared of those things. If she could no longer see them from now on, Qiao Ying felt a lot more relieved. Qiao Ying was still deep in thoughts when her eyes suddenly noticed that many human figures were walking over. All of them deathly pale. Some were headless. Some had no body. Some were crippled. They were all coming over, floating in the air. Ah! Qiao Ying screamed and quickly stopped her all-seeing eye. With a flash, she flew in the direction of Chrysanthemum City in a panic. After that unhappy separation earlier, the three holy lands were extremely angered. Only viewing the misty illusory manor was an enemy. The three saint emperors who were the leaders were even more furious, instantly sending a pigeon to deliver a message to the higher levels of the Holy Land the moment they went back. Then, they gathered everyone who was there currently and announced this matter. Everyone was agitated instantly. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 878. Extermination. All the people from Holy Lands were yelling threats that they absolutely had to make those scums from the misty illusory manor pay the price. They'd rather die than swallow this insult. Compared to this conflict that came out of nowhere, news of the 9 Nether 14th young master that Jun Moxie had released was not attracting as much attention. Everyone's focus was on the conflict between the misty illusory manor and the Holy Lands. And there were some saints who were of the more agitated type, wanting to look for those 7 people from the misty illusory manor for trouble immediately, feeling indignant at this injustice. So what if you're the misty illusory manor? How can you bully others like this? Hai Wuya and He Ji Qiao may not have been in a disadvantageous position during the battle earlier, but they were still feeling a little gloomy. After all, the weapons that had accompanied them for half of their lives were gone like this. And Jun Moxie, on the other hand, was completely fueled with rage. These 3 saint emperors immediately gathered their men and prepared to set off. Since the higher levels of the Holy Lands have already been informed of this matter, what happened in the future will be decided by them. But right now, the misty illusory manor is blatantly stepping over us, even using tricks to take out weapons away. This is literally the same as taking a dump on our heads. Does this old man really care so much about his life? So the army set off for battle. But 2 mysterious people suddenly appeared and forcefully stopped this operation, since it was a matter of life and death. Otherwise, Chrysanthemum City would really be defeated chrysanthemums on the ground. This bunch of people was completely capable of bursting all the chrysanthemums of Chrysanthemum City and send this Chrysanthemum City flying into the sky in one piece. And when those 2 mysterious people went to look for an explanation from the misty illusory manor, they realized that the misty illusory manor's Qiao Guofeng and gang had already vanished silently. They had retreated out of Chrysanthemum City immediately. Even before getting the news that the 9 Nether 14th young master was in Chrysanthemum City. They even abandoned the main duty they had on this trip. Following their departure, there was no way that this misunderstanding between the Holy Lands and the misty illusory manor could be resolved anytime soon. And it was very likely to lead to some not-so-good unforeseen circumstances. And the only person who knew of the truth of the matter, Ying, was battling Jun Moxie in the wilderness. By the time she returned, it would already be too late. And, if Jun Moxie did not return with her, even if she was willing to explain everything, not many people would believe it. Chrysanthemum City temporarily became the 3 Holy Lands territory. This alliance of 2 great forces that had lasted for 10,000 years had thoroughly crumbled from the looks of it. And one more thing that ticked off the 3 Holy Lands was the Chen family's attitude. It was more and more obviously indifferent. Chen Qingtian's second son died tragically, and he was horribly berated by Jun Moxie. Under Chen Chen's influence, he began to see that the 3 Holy Lands only treated his family clan as a supply station, or rather, a cash cow, and an extremely lowly one. As someone who always found pride in serving the Holy Lands, this left Chen Qingtian's heart cold and disappointed. And there was another incident that caused Chen Qingtian to feel anguished. Not a single person from the 3 Holy Lands turned up for his son's funeral. Who could endure such a thing? How did my son die? Isn't it all because of you guys? He died such a horrible death, left without a complete body. Now that he is dead, none of you even turned up to the funeral, and none of you offered your condolences. Even if you sent a spirit Xian, it would have sufficed as giving face. If this matter had happened in the past, Chen Qingtian would be understanding about it. The people who came from the 3 Holy Lands this time, even the weakest ones, were saint-leveled experts. What sort of existence were they? What could my son be even counted as? They wouldn't even be bothered. If a saint was needed for the funeral of the death of a mere youth, then it would really be an exaggeration. Even if the three Holy Lands had really sent someone, the Chen family would even be fearful of receiving such grand treatment and find it hard to relax. But the same thing, when placed in this current situation, the meaning was extremely different. Not only did no one come to the funeral, not a single person offered this pitiful father a single condolence for having to send his son off. Chen Qingtian was thoroughly disheartened, even feeling a little at a loss, as if there was nothing else to live for anymore. He felt like the sacrifices he had made all these years were simply a gigantic joke. A joke that was not funny at all. When the head of the family was in this sort of mood, how good could the rest of the Chen family's attitude get? Naturally, they'd move along with an indifferent attitude. Hence, as the Chen family was busy with the funeral, naturally, they had not properly hosted the experts from the three Holy Lands. And it had also made their mood worse. But they could do nothing about it. They could only wait for the assassins from the Dongfang family to come quickly and resolve this matter so everyone could go back. This world is becoming more foreign, it has really changed. This night, Chen Qingtian and his eldest son, Chen Chen, were meeting secretly in the study room. A family head of his own generation, having to secretly arrange for a conversation with his own son. Chen Qingtian was really a little pitiful as a family head. Chener, the Chen family is done for already. Chen Qingtian's first sentence had left Chen Chen astonished. He raised his head and saw his father's heavy look. So, you must leave this place. Chener, you are the only hope of the Chen family. Hurry up and leave this whirlpool. As long as you are still around, the Chen family will still have hope in making a comeback again. Chen Qingtian said dishearteningly, a heavy look in his eyes. Father, although the Chen family is in a difficult position now, and there is a difference between us and the rest of the super families, but we shouldn't have gotten to a stage of being annihilated. Chen Chen failed to understand. It is already over. From the moment our ancestor Chen Chong died, the Chen family announced its death. For many years, we've been safe under the protection of our ancestor. But ultimately, we are still a lot weaker than the Zhan family in the city next door. We are only subordinates of the Holy Lands. We may seem powerful, but we are worthless the moment the Holy Lands give up on us. And now that our ancestor has passed, the Chen family has become a bait to lure the Dongfang family. Chener, a bait. You should know what it means. Regardless of if the fish takes the bait or not, the bait is just for display. If the fish takes the bait, then the bait will be the first to be swallowed. I had always hoped that this was an opportunity the three Holy Lands had given us, even if it meant sacrificing me as the bait. But the Chen family would be regarded by the Holy Lands. But only now did I realize I was wrong. The Holy Lands will never put a mere family like us in their eyes. Even if all of us sacrificed ourselves, even if 100 of such families did, as long as it achieves their goal, that's all they care about. As to these families, they are destined to be sacrificed. Chen Qingtian's face was gray as he said softly. Chen Qingtian looked at his father, stunned, a surge of emotions rising in his heart. But if I leave, wouldn't that make the Holy Lands suspect you even more? Chen Chen frowned and asked worriedly. Suspect me? So what? Chen Qingtian chuckled and said despondently. From the beginning, I was a dead man. If you stay behind, I am still a dead man, and you will also be throwing your life. If you don't stay, I will still be dead. Is there any difference? Chen Qingtian stood up and turned around. Go. Bring along the woman you love. Tell her. From now on, she is the daughter-in-law of Chen Qingtian, the mistress of the Chen family. With his back still turned, he took out a box and tossed it over. Chen caught it. This is the token of faith of the Chen family. There is your mother's jade hairpin inside. It is a gift for the daughter-in-law. My disapproval of you too caused that child to suffer. Tell her not to hate me. He waved his hand. Go and live in secrecy. From now on, if you could rebuild the Chen family, unless there is a Saint Emperor level expert in the family, don't step foot into the pugilistic world forever. Father. If you don't go, then I'll kill you personally, then kill myself. Chen Qingtian looked up at the sky, his back view trembling, but his voice firm and resolute. Tears poured from Chen Chen's eyes, knowing that his father had made up his mind and wouldn't change it. He choked on his tears, knelt to the floor and slowly kowtowed to his father, before leaving while remaining in a bowed position. Chen Qingtian stood silently. When Chen Chen was at the door, he slowly said, rather be a family of farmers than be a subservient family. Chen Chen's body jerked as he nodded heavily. He forced himself to restrain the sounds of his crying that were about to come out, quickly leaving and disappearing in the night. Chen Qingtian stood as straight as a spear, a heartened smile slowly appearing on his face. As long as Chen Chen was able to walk out and leave this whirlpool, then no matter how he survived in the future, the Chen family would ultimately have a descendant that remained. He silently sat in the study room, still and motionless. At dawn, the housekeeper knocked on the door gently and entered. Master, the ancestral hall has been broken into. The ancestral tablets have all disappeared. Chen Qingtian jolted, tears threatening to spill from his eyes. He waved his hand dismissively. All right, you can go. The housekeeper looked at him and left, feeling full of confusion. Why is the master so odd today? How big of a matter it is for the ancestral tablets to be stolen, but he seemed completely unmoved by it. He shook his head, unable to figure it out, and left. In the study room, Chen Qingtian slowly exhaled and mumbled, I can finally rest assured. The second morning, the people from the Holy Lands learned that the first young master of the Chen family, Chen Chen, had suddenly gone missing. After Zhan Mubai knew of this matter, he instantly sent people to call for Chen Qingtian. And he personally met Chen Qingtian, giving him a lot of face. Zhan Mubai was a saint emperor. To lower himself to speak to him personally, Chen Qingtian should feel excited and grateful to receive such treatment. So Zhan Mubai got straight to the point and asked, where did that first son of yours go? This bastard. Chen Qingtian sighed. He had fallen in love with a maid in our family earlier and wanted to marry her as his wife. How could I agree? So he has been being difficult with me during this period of time. But I had never imagined that this bastard would elope with the maid at a time like this. It really is a disgrace to the family. I will absolutely catch him back and punish him. Eloped? Zhan Mubai scoffed. Chen Qingtian, do the ancestral tablets need to be brought along in an elopement from the Chen family? You couldn't elope earlier, or later, but just had to do it at a time like this? Chen Qingtian, do you think that this seat is very easily to fool? As Zhan Mubai's tone got harsher, an imposing aura suddenly came down. His voice had turned icy cold. Chen Qingtian, you better give me an honest explanation. Perhaps I can still let you keep your life. Otherwise, it is not difficult for me to turn the whole Chen family into ashes. Speak. What schemes do you have? What are you trying to achieve? What sort of devious intentions do you have on the Holy Lands? I'm telling you that you are courting death. Saint Emperor Zhan's tone was full of killing intent, with no concealment at all. He had been meeting with unfortunate situations during this period of time, be it with the misty illusory manner or the 9 nether 14th young master. These were all slaps landing on his face, one after another. But he had nowhere to vent this anger. And this caused his emotions to be a little out of control. And, when he was beaten up and trashed, this goddamn Chen Qing Tian was just there, watching a Saint Emperor get humiliated. This was the greatest reason why Zhan Mubai felt displeased every time he saw Chen Qing Tian. So every time he spoke with Chen Qing Tian, his tone was hoping that this bastard would just die soon. It is the greatest sin to see me being embarrassed. So Zhan Mubai had long developed a desire to kill. But Chen Qing Tian had always been respectful with the Holy Lands. And after all, he was his own disciple's descendant. If there was no suitable reason, Zhan Mubai would find it embarrassing to do it. But the Chen family's gradual indifference in their attitude to the Holy Lands had given Zhan Mubai the most suitable reason. Following Chen Chen's running away, Zhan Mubai used this opportunity. No matter what, I must kill all the people of Chen family who witnessed that matter. Chen Qing Tian couldn't help but feel shocked hearing these few threatening sentences. After which, a surge of anger rose. Chen Chen's departure was entirely out of Chen Qing Tian's arrangements. This was a fact. But Chen Qing Tian had never thought of what he wanted to do to the 3 Holy Lands. First, he didn't dare. Second, he did not feel the need to go to that extent of enmity. Chen Chen leaving home was just a precautionary decision. But he had never imagined that Zhan Mubai was going to pin such a heavy crime on his head without even asking. Ancestor, what do you mean by this? The Chen family has always been loyal, and our ancestor is your disciple. How could we have any intentions of rebellion? This is a huge wrong accusation. Chen Qing Tian argued loudly. Whether wronged or not, you know it yourself. The killing intent on Zhan Mubai's sinister face got heavier and heavier. The last thing Chen Qing Tian knew was that a palm suddenly became bigger and bigger in his face, then he didn't know anything afterwards. When Hai Wuya and He Ji Qiao heard the news, the entire Chen family had been exterminated. Completely and thoroughly. The other 2 Saint Emperors were a little embarrassed to remark on Zhan Mubai's ruthlessness. They only sighed. Since they're killed, then they're killed already. There were no other reactions. After all, it was just a mere worldly family. Even if they were annihilated, it was no big deal. A subservient family like this. The 3 Holy Lands had so many that they could barely count. They can easily nurture countless more in a couple of years. It really was no big deal. The only one who felt enraged was the guardian, Qiao Ying. Qiao Ying learned of his matter the moment she returned. And she went looking for Zhan Mubai, full of anger. Why did you kill them? Qiao Ying was so infuriated her face was pale. Senior Qiao, please appease your anger. This matter is due to my carelessness. Since we arrived in Chrysanthemum City, there has been a series of weird happenings. And the 9 nether 14th young master's sudden appearance put me on my guard. After my investigation, I found out that for unknown reasons, this Chen Manor was the hiding place of the 9 nether 14th young master. There is a basement in Chen Qing Tian's study room. It is full of the cold aura of the 9 nether 14th young master, and there are marks made by 9 nether frost blades. He paused for a while before continuing. Then I found out that in the food today, the Chen family added large amounts of Immortal's Fall. This is the number one poison to cause one to lose all their skills. It is ultimately vicious. Even a saint emperor will be unable to use any xian qi after consuming it. They clearly were thinking of getting rid of us all at one go. Such a vicious way of doing things is truly unacceptable. If they are not killed, how could everyone be appeased? Zhan Mubai's expression changed from anger to an apologetic one. Just that in a moment of fury, I had taken actions, completely forgetting about seeking Senior Qiao's opinion. I seek your forgiveness. Sigh. They were the descendants of my disciple. After all. Now that something like that happened, I am at fault for not being stricter. The Chen family was already all dead, so how could it be proved that Zhan Mubai was babbling nonsense? What he said was the truth now, because no one could refute him. Qiao Ying did not understand the truth. Although she thought Zhan Mubai made sense, but she still felt that it was too much. If that's the case, you can stop at killing Chen Qing Tian. Why did you kill so many innocent people as well? Is it the way the Holy Lands work? Harming the innocent? Blatantly massacring? Zhan Mubai admitted to his mistake and looked guilty. Zhan Mubai, you better not be lying to me about this matter today. Otherwise, even if you are a saint emperor, I will uphold justice for Chen family. Now that things are like this, make proper arrangements for their funerals. Qiao Ying turned around and left angrily. Zhan Mubai looked at her back view, a glint of fury flashing across his eye, which was quickly concealed. Qiao Ying's position was not one he could touch. The Holy Lands would have no hesitation in sacrificing 10 Zhan Mubais in exchange for Qiao Ying. So Zhan Mubai could not do anything about Qiao Ying. And furthermore, her strength surpassed his greatly. When the Chen family had undergone extermination, Jun Moxie was dripping in cold sweat in the Hongjun Pagoda. After the battle with Qiao Ying, he ducked into the Hongjun Pagoda. Seeing that he came in such a pathetic-looking form, Mei Shuayan couldn't help but ask, "What happened?" "I met a crazy woman today." Young Master Jun panted. A young lady, probably 20 years of age. She actually claimed that she had lived for 1,000 years. Ha ha ha. Did she think that she was also an old Demoness? Young Master Jun did not realize that Mei Shuayan's face instantly darkened as she said coldly. A young lady who was 20 years old? Old Demoness? Yeah. But it might be true. This girl's xian skills was really terrifying. Young Master Jun did not know that his death was near, still recalling the battle earlier. If not for the fact that he had one last move, he probably would have died this time. Even the yin-yang escape couldn't help him escape. Are you mocking me? Jun Moxie only felt a pain in his ear, which was grabbed by Mei Shuayan and twisted ruthlessly. A dangerous glint was in Mei Shuayan's eyes as she said emotionlessly. Also an old Demoness? You've met many old demonesses who looked youthful, haven't you? Young Master Jun. But also, you mentioned, what do you mean? Jun Moxie jolted, belatedly realizing that he had offended one of Mei Shuayan's taboos. He quickly laughed cordially and said, No. What I meant to say is that she was lying. How can there be such a youthful old Demoness in the world? Actually, I'm saying that no matter how much Jun Moxie tried to explain himself, Mei Shuayan got angrier and angrier. I really wasn't talking about you, Jun Moxie said, feeling the urge to cry. There's none of that meaning. So you finally admitted that deep down inside your heart, I am also an old Demoness. Mei Shuayan yelled, twisting with even greater strength. Young Master Jun only felt as if his ear was about to fall off. He shouted, "I do not. No, no, no. How could my Shui Yan be compared to someone else? Shui Yan is so beautiful and youthful and pretty, like the bright, flawless moon in the highest of heavens, like the spring winds that turned into rain, like..." Praise and compliments poured out of Jun Moxie's mouth ceaselessly. But the more he said, the more painful it was for his ears. Mei Shuiyan was clearly angry this time, and he was so anxious that his forehead was sweating profusely. No matter how powerful the art of unlocking heaven's fortune was, it was not to the extent where it allowed the ears to grow even longer. Or maybe there would be such skills when he attained higher levels in his cultivation of the art. But he was still far from it right now. After exhausting all his saliva to explain himself, Mei Shuiyan finally let go of his abused ear. She was not completely appeased yet, sitting down aside crossly. Jun Moxie rubbed his nose and sat down beside her in a thick-skinned manner. Taking 2 sniffs of the air, he said, "Shuiyan's body is really fragrant. Just smelling this scent can ease my troubled heart, he said with a salivating expression. "Cut the bullshit. Hurry up and talk about what you encountered," Mei Shuiyan said stiffly. "Yes. This husband shall follow your orders," Jun Moxie replied quickly. "Irritating. Whose husband are you?" Mei Shuiyan protested coquettishly, her face turning red. Jun Moxie finally heaved a sigh of relief internally. The storm is finally going to be over. Oh my God. Young Master Jun felt like what he said earlier was not insinuating anything. But how did it suddenly turn into offending her? Looks like this woman really has no reason for throwing a temper. After calming down, he began to tell of his encounter, not missing a single bit of it. When he was talking about Qiao Ying, Jun Moxie had even chuckled, feeling that that girl was really too naive. "You said that the girl is called Qiao Ying?" Mei Shuiyan suddenly stopped him and widened her eyes. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 879. Young Master Jun's Family Law. Yeah. That girl who claimed to be a 1,000-year-old Demoness, Qiao Ying, apparently also said she had some other nickname called the All-Seeing Rakshasa. What's wrong? Don't tell me what she said was true, Jun Moxie said, confused. Looks like you really went overboard this time. Even she was deployed this time. Mei Shuiyan inhaled deeply. A serious look which had never appeared before was on her face. From what you are telling me, I can tell that this girl is really the legendary all-seeing Rakshasa, Qiao Ying. Impressive. Xian Qi that surpasses Saint Emperors by leaps. The inescapable net. Could she really be someone from 1,000 years ago? Is an old senior? Jun Moxie widened his eyes, suddenly feeling a cramp in his stomach. That gorgeous beauty that he had teased in such unbridled manner was really a who lived for 1,000 over years. Oh my God. What sort of world is this? It's too insane. All-seeing Rakshasa, Qiao Ying. I really didn't imagine that even she would make an appearance in the flesh in this world. Mei Shuiyan stood up and took a few steps. Moxie. You and I know that the people from the 3 holy lands are sordid and contemptible inside despite claiming to be dignified. And the way they do things are even more despicable. But there is an exception to everything. And this senior Qiao Ying is of a completely different kind compared to the rest of the 3 holy lands. All your obscene language can be used on those scums. But you must not be rude to Senior Qiao anymore. Be it inside your heart or verbally. Senior Qiao Ying may be a female, but her heart is extremely kind. And she is upright and honest in her actions and will never be willing to make things difficult for others. Especially repeatedly making great contributions during the war for seizing the heavens, killing experts from the strange races. She can be said to be a legend. And on the three holy lands side, because she is really too pure and untainted by the filth of worldly affairs, they were fearful that she would be taken advantage of when wandering in the pugilistic world, so they never allowed her to make an appearance. This time, I wonder why would they allow her to come forth personally? She frowned, deep in thoughts. With how important the three holy lands view Qiao Ying, there will definitely be other peak experts protecting her and her sudden appearance in this place. Otherwise, the Heaven Saint Palace would definitely not let her come out to explore. Mei Shuayan turned around and looked at Jun Moxie. A determined look was on her face. Moxie, I believe that the situation is extremely bad for you this time. Qiao Ying may be powerful, and that all-seeing eye is also the greatest counter to your amazing escape technique, but she is not scary in terms of her personality. She will not even have the thought of killing you. But that expert protecting her will definitely not be an easy person to deal with. Their strength will definitely be above that of a Saint Emperor's. This time, I must go out and fight alongside with you. No. There is no room for negotiation on this. Jun Moxie rejected. With that negligible cultivation of yours, you are not even enough to stuff the gap between their teeth. What can you do out there? Fight alongside with me? I'm afraid that you may not be of help, but I'm sure that you'll slow me down. Young Master Jun was extremely afraid of the idea of Mei Shuayan partaking in battles. He made up his mind that he'd rather temporarily hurt her than allow her to take the risk, even spewing all sorts of hurtful remarks. But it is very different now. How could Mei Shuayan not understand what young Master Jun was thinking? Hearing such ill remarks, she did not feel angry. Instead, she laughed in a pleased manner. Since I began practicing the art of unlocking heaven's fortune, the blood passed down within my species has unexpectedly been awakened. Now, I have mastered 3 types of secret skills known by my species. And I believe I am reaching the bottleneck of breaking through for the art of unlocking heaven's fortune. And that yin-yang escape art that you taught me, I am able to use it now, even though I may not be able to use it to defeat the enemy. But there are no issues in protecting myself. There is absolutely no problem in going out this time. She blinked playfully and her eyes turned into crescents as she grinned. You worry that I'll slow you down? I should be worrying whether you would weigh me down. Jun Moxie was surprised, only responding after a while. Me? Weighing you down? This little girl is really boasting shamelessly. Come, let this young master try weighing you down. Mei Shuayan scoffed and said, looks like you really haven't been taught a lesson for too long. This lady realizes that you're getting more and more arrogant. World cage. Jun Moxie laughed loudly. Your current strength is far from mine. World cage already, He was only halfway through his sentence when he suddenly realized his entire body was really paralyzed. He couldn't even speak. So he just stood there flabbergasted, his mouth left hanging open. It was really the taste of imprisonment that he hadn't had in a while. Mei Shuayan sent a flying kick into Jun Moxie's plumpy asterisk talks. His face was still full of astonishment. Young Master Jun was instantly sent flying in the air and was left turning midair. Mei Shuayan snorted coldly and said, this is one of the special skills of the Snow Ferret clan. Then she kicked again, kicking young Master Jun, who had not landed upwards once again, before continuing to speak. We are able to activate 3 times the strength of any position. Aside from this, we can easily control the power of heaven and earth, and allow it to be transformed into any form. The world cage may not be able to deal with you under normal circumstances, but this upgraded world cage of mine can be adjusted anytime, and depending on the opponent, it can be a perfect counter. I believe it is even better to use than Qiao Ying's inescapable net. Do you understand now? Young Master Jun, who is afraid that I will slow you down? She gave 5, 6 kicks before she finished saying her words. Then, she sent one last kick at Jun Moxie's belly. Young Master Jun was sent flying backwards. Pooh! He landed on the ground, triggering off a weird wave in the whirlpool of heaven-earth spiritual chi. But that peculiar strength that had imprisoned him was also gone without a trace. Young Master Jun quickly rubbed his aching body as he stood back up with a pained expression. This is a sneak attack. Blatantly using sneaky ways. I was not even in the correct posture yet. Mei Shuayan snorted and said, "Who asked you to look down on me and say that I will slow you down?" She had yet to finish her sentence, but only saw that whole mirage of young Master Jun rubbing his bum suddenly vanish. She immediately noticed that something was wrong and was just about to start running away when a pair of powerful and strong hands already sniped around her tightly. Then, a couple of places on her body went numb and she could not move anymore. Then, Jun Moxie appeared before her with a grin, lifting her chin with his finger. "Babe, weren't you pretty capable just now? Come, smile one for this young master," he said in a frivolous tone. Mei Shuayan was embarrassed and angry. "Let me go quickly. You lecher." Jun Moxie scoffed and said, "Calling me a lecher? You actually dared to ambush me. You really deserve to be hit. In terms of teaching skills, I am still half a master of yours. Sneak attacking your master is a crime of being unfilial. You should be hit on your bum 3 times. In terms of principles, a woman should have the 3 rules and 5 virtues. A husband guides his wife. But you dare to beat your own husband and attack your honored husband's honored bottom. A crime on top of your crimes. You should be hit on your B*TT 7 times." Then, he exerted his strength and flipped Mei Shuayan's body around, causing her to lay across his knees. He laughed loudly and lifted his right hand, which landed on that supple bottom with a paw. He only felt like everywhere his hands landed was extremely soft and smooth, and a feeling of thirst appeared in his heart. He almost got a nosebleed. Mei Shuayan let out a soft cry, her face instantly turning red. She gritted her teeth and said, "If you don't let me go, I'll." "So what will you do? As the saying goes, regulate the family. Rule the state. Then pacify the country. If I am not strict on the family laws, how can I pacify the world in the future? This beating must be given." Young Master Jun scoffed, saying in a firm and righteous manner. This jerk had just hit once and was already addicted. Putting on a stern image like Justice Bao Tu, but deep inside, he just wanted to take advantage of Mei Shuayan. Although his expression was decent, that lustful look in his eyes that was like a hungry wolf that betrayed him. Mei Shuayan bit her bottom lip, secretly reprimanding herself. She knew that this guy would not be honest, but why was she still so careless? She grit her teeth and chose to not speak, laying across his legs. But she realized that the palm did not descend, but instead, a pair of weird hands had began gently fondling with her sensitive spot. You. What are you doing?" The great beauty Mei was really panicking now. "I am carrying out the family law." Jun Moxie scoffed. But this guy was getting a little excited. The feeling on the hand is really too good. Holy shut. And this is how it feels through the clothes. If they're removed, and that last little bit of barrier is thrown away, how amazing would that feel? I'm really looking forward now. Just as he thought, his mind began to wander. God knew what sort of image he was imagining in his head. But his pair of hands were getting more and more dishonest, gradually filling with the tendency to want to make his fantasies into a reality. Let me go. Green Hunter is still here. Mei Shuai cried bashfully. Jun Moxie finally snapped back to his senses. Still dwelling in his fantasies, he had forgotten to continue carrying out the family law, giggling in a daze as he released Mei Shuaiyan's acupuncture points. Mei Shuaiyan leaped up, her face completely red. Even her fair, pinkish neck was red. She tried to tidy herself and rolled her eyes at young Master Jun. She turned away, biting her lips and refusing to speak. Jun Moxie was reminded by her sentence, looking over to Snake King Green Hunter, who was in under the tree. Speaking of Green Hunter, it also reminded me of something that may allow Green Hunter to regain consciousness soon. I'm not sure if the two magical items you mentioned before, the 7-color holy fruit and 9-segment exquisite lotus, will have any effect on her. Mei Shuaiyan thought carefully. Her face was still flushed, but she was already focused on this question. After all, with many years of sisterhood, her friendship with Snake King was not ordinary. Perhaps it may have some use. But it is not known yet. And those two items are both magical items of the mortal world. Even if they will not have any direct effect, but at the very least, it will not have any adverse effects. But Moxie, will there be any effects to Green Hunter's injuries, in staying like that in her human form? Most Xian beasts will return to their original form when they suffer severe injuries. Retaking their original form is one of the ways Xian beasts protect themselves. Some injuries may definitely spell death in the human form, but when returned to the original form, it may turn out to not be fatal. And this is also the greatest difference between humans and Xian beasts. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 880. Golden Jade Fluid. I do understand what situation you are speaking of, but that peculiar situation has a prerequisite, which is that the injured must be in a conscious state of mind, but Green Hunter's mind is at its limit, swaying and on the verge of disseminating. The amount of energy used by her is lesser in the human form. But if she returns to her original form, I'm afraid that the nutrients the body has to offer is not enough for her body to use, and if it goes on to use up the last bit of life force. Jun Moxie said softly. In other words, could it be that even you can't do anything about it? Mei Shuaiyan asked worriedly. My cultivation is still too shallow and I really do not have any good solution. But there definitely will be one. Jun Moxie said solemnly. What I can do currently is to use primal chaos purple chi to help her sustain her life and ensure her life force doesn't diminish. As long as her life force doesn't go out, there will be a chance to turn it around sooner or later. I believe that there will definitely be a way, when I'm at the 6th or 7th level of the Hongjun Pagoda. You also have been practicing in Hongjun Pagoda for so long. Don't you have enough confidence in this treasure? Jun Moxie had complete faith in the Hongjun Pagoda. The pills refined in the 9th level of the Hongjun Pagoda could even turn a mortal into an immortal instantly. Works of immortals reviving the dead was a simple feat, although Green Hunter's injuries were not light. But it may not even be an issue in the eyes of immortals. I believe in you. But your circumstances are so dangerous now. How are you planning to face it? Jun Moxie floated over to Green Hunter, pressing his palm against her back and transfusing primal chaos purple chi into her again to prolong her life. Frowning as he pondered. After a long while, he finally said, "As to this bunch of experts from the Holy Lands, I only have one word: kill. Kill? But you are only a third-level venerable. There are 30, 40 enemies, and those who are the weakest amongst them are second, third-level venerables. And there are also many saints, and there are 3 saint emperors providing support. If my guess is not wrong, Heaven's Saint Palace would have deployed 3 guardians and above to accompany Qiao. How are you going to kill? With that strength, even if they stand there completely still for you to kill, you may not be able to kill them at all. This is a fact. An undeniable fact. Our strength is more than enough for dealing with normal circumstances. But compared to our current enemies, we are really too weak. Although you have successfully stirred up a storm, you don't have the capabilities to deal with its consequences. From the way I see it, I think we must take some measures to lie low for now." Mei Shuayan said worriedly. "Lie low?" Jun Moxie laughed bitterly, rubbing his nose. "Big sis, you already said it yourself. I was the one who stirred up this storm. Today, the storm clouds has all gathered. But I, the instigator, wants to lay low. Isn't that a little disheartening?" I still have the same question. Do you have enough strength to handle the consequences? Since your strength is insufficient, what else do you want to do? What else can you do? Mei Shuayan rolled her eyes at him. Indeed. I can't win them head-on, but we can assassinate. Jun Moxie gave a quirky grin. If we are talking about assassinating, I have complete confidence in crushing those who are lower than Saint Emperor. As to experts who are Saint Emperors and above, we may not be able to assassinate them. But it doesn't mean that there is no one who can subdue them. There may still be some significance in what you said if we were in the past. But right now, in this world, the 3 Holy Lands have been eradicating those who are at odds with them for 10,000s of years. All those forces who originally were worthy enough of being on par with them were all annihilated completely long ago. They don't even have enemies now. What other power or force is there in the world that can subdue them? This sentence that was said unintentionally also gave Mei Shuayan a shock herself. Because this sentence was said with great seriousness. But it had also encompassed a terrifying fact: the 3 Holy Lands do not have any enemies. All their enemies had been completely exterminated, annihilated, and destroyed over the passage of time, leaving not a single descendant. 10,000 years. For the entire duration of 10,000 years, constantly all those who defied or were at odds with them. Mei Shuayan suddenly felt so shocked by her own sentence that she was covered with goosebumps. All her hair was standing. When put this way, wasn't Tianfa Forest the last force that could go against them? Which was also their last target for annihilation. There is no absolute in the world. Only what cannot be imagined. There is nothing that is impossible. As long as we put our hearts to search, there will be existences that are powerful enough. For example, the 9 Nether 14th Young Master? Jun Moxie said. I knew it. Since you were planning all this in the dark, you must have something you could rely on. But Moxie, I must warn you, even if the 9 Nether 14th Young Master also fights the 3 Holy Lands, that is only out of his own intentions. Because we do not have the rights to go against the 9 Nether 14th Young Master. We even lack the authority to speak to him as equals. A heavy look came over Mei Shuayan's face. Don't tell me that you only intend to just push the wave and add to the billows, watching from the sidelines in this storm. If that is truly the case, I will support you. But with your personality, will you be willing to? Jun Moxie was stunned. Mei Shuiyan's sentence had struck his sore spot. All along, he was already used to fighting enemies weaker than him. But with his improvement in his cultivation, his opponents had become stronger and stronger. This caused him to completely lose the rights to face them on directly, having no other choice but to use whatever sort of possible means to deal with them. Be it putting on airs, using bluffs and tricks, pretending to be powerful or framing others and shifting the blame. All these methods were effective and had great results. But since he started out, how many times did he face a battle head-on? If you wish to survive in this disordered world where strength determines everything, and wish to be feared by others, all these must be built on a basic foundation: strength. Bloody battle. Establish your might. Shocking the world with one battle. The best solution in eradicating all future worries was only by establishing your absolute power. Otherwise, how could the opponent be convinced being defeated in such an obscure manner? Naturally, they'd keep coming to look for trouble repeatedly. This time, we can make sure the 14th young master is there by chance. But what about next time? The next time? Is it going to continue like this? You are right. We mustn't watch from the sides in this situation this time. Jun Moxie said slowly, enunciating each and every word. Since you have decided to battle, then a battle it shall be. I believe that as long as we gather all the strength of TNFA, no matter what, there will be a chance to fight. Mei Shuiyan said. No. Jun Moxie shook his head slowly. No? Do you still have any other ideas? Mei Shuiyan was stunned. The only possible solution we have right now is to gather all the seniors of TNFA and face them straight on. No matter what the outcome is, we must make the 3 Holy Lands pay the terrible price. Only when we beat them until it hurts. Then, they'll realize that there is no good end for those who mess with us. Otherwise, we might not even get past this stage of Chrysanthemum City alone. Mei Shuiyan paused. Even the two of us, although we are not weak, we are still no match for Saint Emperors. Unless we are able to improve our strength exponentially overnight. But that sort of thing has never been heard of in all of history. Who said there isn't? Unheard of since ancient times until now doesn't mean that I don't have it. I just said, there are only things that cannot be imagined in the world. But there is absolutely nothing that is impossible. Jun Moxie said indifferently. His eyes slowly landed on that giant heaven-earth spirit vein, and a glint of madness appeared in his eyes. You have? Mei Shuiyan had not imagined that she would get an unexpected, absurd answer. We really do have a way to greatly improve our strength. But there are always risks for gains. And there is a great risk in this method. And it is a little wasteful. Jun Moxie slowly said, as he caressed the heaven-earth spirit vein beneath him. Inside this thing, it is actually hollow. The reason a heaven-earth spirit vein is formed is because in a unique enclosed space full of spiritual qi, hollow blue rock milk was formed first. He smiled and continued to speak. The hollow blue rock milk is an extremely magical medicine. If anyone is lucky enough to find it and consume it, it is capable of reviving the person from the dead and vastly increase their strength. If no one discovers it over a long time, this hollow blue rock milk will accumulate and over time, its outer layers will begin to solidify. It is the initial layers of hollow blue rock milk that were pushed out first. And after 10,000 years of accumulation of these precipitate, it will form the heaven-earth holy milk. Heaven-earth holy milk? Mei Shuiyan was stunned. She had heard of hollow blue rock milk, but never of heaven-earth holy milk. Because hollow blue rock milk alone was already a magical treasure that was almost impossible to find in the world. 1 drop. Just a single drop of it was enough to revive the dead. A drop was enough to break through any bottlenecks of Xian cultivators and improve their strength by hundreds of years. But she had never thought that above the hollow blue rock milk, there was still a heaven-earth holy milk. Shocking. Truly shocking. But the shock had yet to end. Jun Moxie continued to go on. After a long period of time, the formation of heaven-earth holy milk was like the same as a large-scale formation for gathering spiritual qi. It no longer absorbed heaven-earth spiritual qi from being in contact with the ground, but instead, automatically gathered and attracted all the spiritual qi over. As the spiritual qi gathered more and more, the amount of heaven-earth holy milk formed would also increase. And the outer layers would harden at its peak. So it would only grow in volume, but not harden any further. And this increase in volume starts from the inside. In other words, it will purge out those inadequate impurities. And those impurities will form into this thing before our eyes. Jun Moxie slapped on this giant heaven-earth spirit vein, as he exclaimed. And when this outer layer gets to about 3 zhang in length, the heaven-earth spirit vein in its beginning stage is already formed. And the magical thing about this item is that no matter where it is placed, it will become the ideal place for cultivation for any cultivator. A heaven-earth spirit vein that is 3 zhang is enough to turn an entire mountain into the best place for practicing. And following the growth of the heaven-earth spirit vein, the quality of the heaven-earth holy milk inside will also increase. The longer it lasts, the higher its quality. If it reaches a certain age, it'll transform into an even rarer, golden jade fluid. According to legends, the heaven-earth spirit veins that are able to produce golden jade fluid are at least 10 zhangs in length. A bitter smile flashed across Jun Moxie's face, using his palm to hit the spirit vein underneath him. He said to Mei Shuiyan, and this heaven-earth spirit vein underneath us is almost 50 zhang long. Do you know what it means? What? Mei Shuiyan's sudden shock had interrupted Jun Moxie. She jumped and flailed her arms about, very unmatching to her fairy-like appearance, screaming at Jun Moxie. This giant rock that I have always been sleeping on is the heaven-earth spirit vein? And there is the magical, golden jade fluid inside it. A heaven-earth spirit vein? Mei Shuiyan widened her eyes and held her breath as she looked at Jun Moxie, waiting for his reply. Yes. This thing before our eyes is a piece of perfectly complete heaven-earth spirit vein. And it is the type that has passed the age required for producing golden jade fluid. The thing inside this, I believe just a drop alone, can make a normal person who has never cultivated Xian Qi to shoot all the way up to a spirit Xian, and this is already a safe estimate. Jun Moxie replied Mei Shuiyan, his voice full of confidence. He rolled his eyes. Why did you think your cultivation could improve so quickly? From a little ferret to a first-level venerable within 2 short months? I believe that there is no such crazy skill out there that can be this insane. The art of unlocking heaven's fortune is, of course, one of the reason. All the spiritual qi in this place is also another. But the greatest reason is because I placed you on this thing right from the beginning, allowing it to constantly cleanse your meridians. So every time you sleep, your physique will also improve due to it. Especially when you are practicing on this. It saves you so much work. But the promises that result are in multiple folds. Mei Shuiyan's body swayed. She moaned and supported her head with one hand. Or else why did you think I didn't give you any beddings? Am I such an inconsiderate person? Jun Moxie continued to grumble, rolling his eyes. Now you have achieved great results in your practice. The first thing you did is to bully me, kicking me there. And so many times. Young Master Jun felt like his luck was really poor. When he was practicing, he didn't have something like this, causing him be lower than this girl. But he had just finished talking when he realized Mei Shuayan had moaned slightly and with a roll of her eyes. Her body fell weakly and she passed out. This surprise was too big. So big that even Mei Shuayan couldn't endure it. You're kidding me. Why are her psychological support capabilities so weak? Jun Moxie said in astonishment. Young Master Jun had clearly belittled the shocking news he had just delivered. In fact, only someone like him who owned numerous treasures wouldn't find this a big deal. Anyone would faint learning of something like this. Even if it was an immortal who had come down to the mortal realm, heard of, and witnessed this thing, he would definitely faint. Because this was really not something ordinary people would see. A magical treasure that was rarely seen and heard about in heaven and earth. This story will be continued to chapter 881. For those of you who are not subscribed yet, please subscribe. The interesting and best stories will be updated. See you again in the next episode.